shut up, cover your mouth.
Okay, we are live. A few minutes early. This is Chief Crow, C1984. It's 3/6/2024, just before 8 p.m. Mountain Time. Infinite Plane Radio, open phones for unscreened minds, skeptical minds. Closed minds are welcome to call. We are studying them. We're making a study of the massified mind. The complacent Truman, the NPC, very interested in all kinds. Takes really a lot of different perspectives to get a big picture of how this thing all works. By the way, breaking: German man investigated after taking 217 vaccines against C19 in a 2-year period. Police decided not to charge the man. What are they going to charge him with? Being too healthy? Being too immune? But I just want to throw that in the face of all the antis out there. You know who you are. By your logic, he should be dead 217 times over. But he's just fine. The main topic tonight, and I kind of hinted at this in the title of the live stream, which is Me Too at Bohemian Grift. The Bohemian Grove thing is way overstated. It was never a human sacrifice. It's a big family event. I'm not saying there's not crazy rumors there, but based on what we've seen, Jones really hyped it up. He probably had designated parking. Kid Rock was just there with his guitar. There's really not a lot there. Alex Jones claimed somebody whistled at him and his buddy's posterior got pinched. It was probably Alex. My point is, I think it's all hype. I don't think they're actually going over there and doing anything other than this ritual cremation of care. But if you look at it, Moloch is a bull, not an owl. And the cremation of care is about dole care. Dole care is this man that they're burning every summer, and it means that they're getting rid of their issues, their cares, their responsibilities for a period of time at their summer camp. Not all that different from the Burning Man they do here in Santa Fe, Old Man Gloom. Diana South says, I remember AJ hyperventilating when at Bohunk Grove. Yeah, I think he had to climb up a hill. I think he was just breathing heavy. After his stint as Hicks, he got a little lazy. But he's back in shape, ready to run up that hill again for the next post-election attempt at a coup. Joined by Diana South, Austin 108, Let's Go, Frank Murr, Holly Weird, P Trippa 103. Okay, now Me Too at Bohemian Grove. This is a reference to another MMA character, a professional boxer. It's always these paragons of toxic masculinity that are charged with disseminating right-wing talking points and memes in the conspiracy realm. And I think they use a lot of comedians because they're entertaining, and they want to make this alt media entertaining. Because it's not skeptical media. Alt media is a subset of mainstream media. So these popular comedians who get in front of popular conspiracy theories, they're not really like outsiders or speaking truth to power. No, they're repackaging mainstream light for your consumption. But I've also noticed that there's this big trend among fighters to also be carrying these types of ideas. And again, I think it's because they want to make sure they're conflating or connecting and maintaining a connection between toxic masculinity and anti-mainstream media. Because mainstream media is for the massified simp. Professional boxer Ryan Garcia tells, and I think he's lying. Look, I think he's lying for clicks. That's why I'm saying it's Me Too at Bohemian Grift. Because Bohemian Grift, what I mean by this is that I didn't even pay attention to Alex Jones until he sneaked into Bohemian Grove. And I think it's mostly just like a scary campfire story. They never really produced anything. But anyway, professional boxer Ryan Garcia tells Andrew Tate that Bohemian Grove is real. And then he claims, quote, they held me down and made me watch little kids get abused. This is horrible stuff. If you listen to it, it's horrible stuff. And he swears a lot to convince you that he's not lying. And I think it's all for clicks. He's talking to Andrew Tate, very questionable character. I mean, Andrew Tate would have been one of the members of the club, I imagine. Maybe even holding down Ryan Garcia. Like, why is he talking to Andrew Tate about this? But this is the story that's going viral right now, and even Alex Jones has questioned this person's mental state. Liz Crocken posted, professional boxer Ryan Garcia tells Andrew Tate in an X Spaces that he was held down, tied up, and forced to watch the rape of children in the woods. This is like back to early days of Q and Pizzagate. He said the higher elites are behind this. He has proof, including video evidence, that Bohemian Grove is real. Yet no one's disputing that it's real. And then he claims that they raped him there when he was 2. Just sounds like satanic panic type stuff, which goes viral quick. Then this is also following Garcia releasing a video claiming his Instagram account was hacked, his cards were locked, and he said something about how if he dies, it wasn't him. So what we're looking at here is some hype. I'll go ahead and play a short clip so you can kind of hear what sounds like a little bit of hysteria.
Bro, you already know who they are, bro.
You know the path
Andrew,
you're going down is dangerous, my friend. That's
I
what
don't
I'm
give
worried
a
about.
fuck. I don't give a fuck. They can't touch me. I'm a god.
Well, that's
The guy claiming to be a god, talking to Andrew Tate, is basically saying he's not worried about it. I question what this is. Sounds like a bunch of hype. Alex Jones comments about it here. Here he's actually talking to Joe Rogan about his experience with it.
So I'm sitting there during the ritual, and I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. And the dude goes, shut up, I'll kill you. And they're all taking it very seriously. And they were...
Nobody grunted at Alex Jones, shut up, we're going to kill you. Like, it literally looks like some big summer camp thing with fireworks. It's not as dark as they make it to be. It's just so much hype. Like that Eyes Wide Shut. That's hype. The people with the masks. Most boring orgy you could ever imagine. It's just these people standing around, these weird old guys. It's just like everyone's covered in dust. All right, let's see what we have here. Joined by Dua Simpera says, hi all, on the road today, so we'll have to settle for just listening in. Awesome. Joined by Thirst for Truth. Dinah South says, Liz Cronkin is a huge... Oh yeah, she drinks the Kool-Aid. Hits the Q-pipe. High on Hopium. Oh, by the way, the band Ministry just released an album a couple days ago called Hopium for the Masses. And it has a song about January 6th in which Donald Trump Jr. is saying, you can be a zero or you can be a hero, before he sends the people up the hill. But yeah, if you want to listen to Donald Trump Jr. in a heavy metal industrial band track, check out Ministry's Hopium for the Masses. The title caught my eye. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we used that title here. But yeah, Ministry, new album. You'll probably hear more of it. I think they've been on Alex Jones before, or their singer has been. But I checked out a few other tracks. I think there's another one. But it seems to be really lambasting MAGA stand, kind of like Green Day did. So they're not taking a pro-MAGA, pro-Trump angle here, like some of these others, like these MAGA rappers, who are pretty big. All right, let's continue here. Alex Jones talking about how he was threatened with death if he kept on talking through the performance.
And they're all taking it very seriously. And they were taking it very serious. This hearse comes in with the body of a child. It is an effigy. They're not killing it. And
well, it's just a bundle of sticks, right?
Yeah, well, it looks like a kid. No, later, others infiltrated later that worked there and got us photos of it. It's an image of a kid.
Look at that. Look at that owl god.
So now he's claiming they actually burned a kid. No, it's an effigy. It's like the cremation of care is not a satanic. If you read it, Midsummer's Night, kind of, a little dramatic. But again, it's very much kind of mundane. They're really overhyping this. So now this other guy comes along and he upstages Alex Jones, saying he actually saw and witnessed and was a victim in these rapes of children by these elite. And they never name anybody. Like, who did it? Who was there? But anyway, we'll move on. Oh, wait, Kid Rock. Here's Kid Rock talking about his stint at the Bohemian Grove. And I don't think he was held down. He doesn't mention being held down. So he would have been, I guess, with Andrew Tate holding people down. I mean, how does this work?
One thing no one can deny is that he exposed the media. He exposed the media for being essentially a propaganda agent. It's not just the news.
Yep.
and to
So again, this is Joe Rogan on, or with Kid Rock. I'm fast forwarding to the part where Kid Rock talks about his. I think he was invited.
allow people on the show to support that, to try to just.
Well, anyway, for some reason, whenever I listen to Joe Rogan, I just feel a little self-conscious. I have to move past it. He backed up on the moon landing. That's really perplexing, really disconcerting. There's no way you can see through that and then somehow be convinced that it really happened. I mean, I guess it's money. What do you all think? Let's move on here. Lean Dion says no names, no lawsuits. You know who was pretty bold in naming names was David Icke in his Children of the Matrix. But then he threw in there, yeah, they do all this stuff, but they're also shape-shifting reptilians. The Queen is a 12-foot tall reptilian in her full form, which muddies the water quite a bit. He might have believed it. It's possible he believed it. But it wasn't sustainable overall. There was a period of time when Trutherville was obsessed with looking for evidence of reptiles on video. So any bit of blurriness was, oh, it's a reptilian shape-shifting on the TV screen, which didn't make any sense. But then that kind of went away. Transvestigation kind of replaced the reptilian thing. And where are they at now? Okay, let's see here. Mango Penguin says Joe was a host on Fear Factor. Yeah, look, he's not someone. I don't look for any of these characters on the world stage for any kind of answers on anything. But it's just, to me, it's kind of mind-blowing that someone could deconstruct something and then be walked back into believing it. But what's even more perplexing are those who see through the fake moon landing but think the space station's real, for example. That's way worse. All right, let's see here. Holly Weird says, dead end narratives, entertainment, debate, confusion, all the emotions by design that come with it, so the real questions never get asked. Yeah, this is what I would consider to be mostly just truth or bait. They throw it out there, the truthers gather around, and they're like, you know what? If we vote for Donald Trump, he's going to drain the swamp, expose the deep state, and symbolism will be their downfall. Q's going to save us, basically. That's what they're doing here. They're just passing out more Kool-Aid. And this individual here claims to be a witness. Is anybody going to fact check it? No. No way. But I think a lot of people in the comments anyway seem to think he's in all likelihood suffering from some kind of a delusion. Here's Trump, and this is not AI generated. You saw those AI generated viral pictures of Trump where his followers are putting Trump with just like random black people and then sharing them around as though it's going to somehow help his prospects. Just, deep faked political ads on the cheap. But this one's kind of interesting. This is not an AI, as fake as it looks. That is Trump back there with the number 45 ominously on the side of his head. But he's back there dancing behind a woman in a very short skirt who is down low near the floor. And the caption says, Trump dancing at Laura Trump's dog charity event. Like that sounds like an AI prompt. Like you go into Midjourney and you say, yeah, I want Trump dancing at Laura Trump's dog charity event, and this is what it would give you. And it looks unreal, but this is real. Just pointing it out, this actually happened. Okay, moving on here. We'll continue to look into that. And here's another example of how Hopium works, cognitive bias. So Zonkt Anon saw this video of Hillary Clinton. And now, the word on Truther Street, or on Q Street, is that Hillary Clinton was executed about 5 years ago. And then they had a clone, and she got unruly. They executed her. And here they have an actress by the name of Zerlina. So here's what happened. This is what happened, and then I'll tell you the truth. What happened is Hillary Clinton was having a conversation on this TV interview, Sirius XM's Mornings with Zerlina. But in the conversation, she said something about Zerlina, and Zonkt Anon was certain that she was talking about her real name. So he says, oopsie, fake Hillary called herself by her own real name, Zerlina. Listen at the 3-second mark. They're losing control. So the QAnoners thought, okay, Hillary Clinton's body double just gave away the game, and her name's Zerlina. Well, no, if you took 5 seconds to listen to the interview, you would know the host is Zerlina. Let me play it, and then you'll see how they got confused.
And, somebody the other day said to me, Zerlina, well, but
Somebody said to me, Zerlina. So, of course, they took from that, okay, this is not Hillary Clinton, this is somebody named Zerlina. Plain Hillary Clinton, boom, busted, deep state, Hillary's dead. Sorry, we have additional context here. Mornings with Zerlina Wilkins.
And, somebody the other day said to me, Zerlina, well, but, Joe Biden's old. I said, you know what? Joe Biden is old.
All right, so there you have it. Just another massive Twitter account connected to Qism that gets a lot of traction, tens of thousands of followers, no fact checking. And after something like this, you think he's going to delete it? No. They never go back. And it's because they're doing this for clicks. It's engagement farming. It's clickbait. Yeah, boom, spelled with two Q's, BQQM. I'm really hoping that maybe they finally do kick down our doors and take the Q's and the question marks off our keyboards. Like at this point, I won't mind. I'm getting really tired of these big, gigantic Q channels. And they're dominant on X. So for some reason, they get all the traction. So if you think it's not a big deal or Q is just a fringe, no, it's mainstream MAGAville. They're all on this level here. And they're all just waiting. In fact, you got to hear, we'll get to this next. Nick Fuentes is talking about how they're ready to die for Trump. And he said that Trump is hot. And that when he gets old, he doesn't want to be a boring cracker like McCain. But he wants to be hot like Trump. So we'll play that in a minute here. Ryan Garcia raises concerns as the boxing star alleged he was raped by a family member as a child and witnessed human trafficking in another rant after a disturbing video in which he claimed he was dead. So if you've never heard of Ryan Garcia, now you have. And now you're probably going to pay to watch him fight. His ex-wife on Instagram said, "If my followers are believers, pray for Ryan. We're not in contact. He may seem fine, but he's not. He's being heavily oppressed. This is not a troll. I'm concerned, and so is his family. We're not part of this, but this is real." In all caps, pray for him. So this is real. Someone sent this to me. He's got a tattoo of the all-seeing eye on his right hand, which could mean he's under the control of the Illuminati, and he's constantly being reminded that he's being watched. Or he's in the club, and this is some type of political stunt, PR stunt, designed to sell tickets to UFC, which is what I think. What do you all think? Anyone here think this guy is truly a victim of some kind of weird thing going on at Bohemian Grove? Which again, I think it's hyped. Bohemian Grove is a nothing burger. Let's go ahead and just get over it. Okay, so check this out. This is very interesting. We have been noticing and talking about symbolism and architecture as it relates to the major psyops. And this is something that really stood out to me as intriguing. Someone shared this on X. The One World Trade Center, when viewed from near the base, is a pyramid. And this would have been intentionally inculcated into the design by the designers when they made this. And this adds just a little more confirmation to my assessment that this is a representation of the Tower of Babel and America, and America's secret destiny in which it falls. And what I mean is, let's just go over a couple details. The One World Trade Tower is 1,776 feet tall. The year of America's founding, 1776. The dollar bill on the back, the pyramid, has in Roman numerals 1776, which again correlates to the year America was founded. But more interestingly, on the Masonic calendar, Anno Lucis, Tower of Babel's construction begins 1776. So AL 1776, the Tower of Babel begins. 1776 AD, America begins. But this is a correlation between America and Babylon and its secret destiny. When you compare the two calendars, AD is 4,000 years behind AL. And This is all according to biblical lore and their timing for the flood and their creation, and like the young Earth thing would look at the stuff and it would make perfect sense to them. It's a different timeline. But my point of it is, in 1776 AD, it would have been 5776 AL, which adds another connection because the Great Pyramid in Giza is 5,776 inches. So what we have here is a connection from the pyramid in Giza to the pyramid on the dollar bill to America to the building of the Tower of Babel and the One World Trade Tower and its height. But the final piece of this is that from the base, the One World Trade Tower quite literally looks like a pyramid. Not Shocked says David Icke now calls them sex shifters. Look, David Icke these days has really been going against what he calls the mainstream alternative media. I'm like, wait, how do you say you're not mainstream alternative media? I mean, I like his work. I do kind of miss the reptilian thing, but he believes in every single fake news event. They're all false flags, but people are dying. He's pretty much, he's not a big Q person, but everything that Q says is stuff that he's also recycled from the same sources. There's no way he's an alternative in any sense, except he's kind of the new age branch of mainstream alternative. But outside of alternative media, the only thing you really have that could be considered an alternate to both main and alt would be what we're doing, which is skepticism. And there's no skepticism if you accept every news story at face value and then you add on your own special perspective so you can regurgitate it for money. Hollywood says David Icke is one of them. Well, David Icke has some interesting viewpoints because he was in the Green Party, and so he saw the whole green scam. It's like, oh, cool, he sees through environmentalism. He's one of us. Oh, wait a minute. He's a massive chemtrail pusher. And chemtrail shills don't have a leg to stand on. I've been confronting a lot of them. Look, High Impact Flicks. He's a chemtrail shill. There's only two possibilities here. One, he's making an argument from ignorance out of literal ignorance, and he doesn't know that he doesn't know. Or he is propagating a propaganda line designed to give the right wing their own version of climate change. So, wittingly or not, he is participating in the Psy-War, and he is promulgating a conspiracy theory on par with climate change, but he's targeting his own side with it, whether he knows it or not. Is he a fool? Is he a dupe, or is he an agent? And I don't follow dupes. I don't follow agents. And right now, there's not enough of us yet to put pressure on people to examine their claims and where they're coming from. But there will come a time soon. And that's when we can really highlight the schism. In fact, I want to widen the gap. We want to have a schism between the off-world stage and Trutherville. And the people who are going to cling to those guardrails need to be highlighted for reasons that will become apparent as we move forward and form this breakaway parallel media. But I have been calling many of them out because it's unconscionable. You're spreading fear-based propaganda to terrify people about something that doesn't exist. Like, how does that help? Moreover, your arguments are terrible. They're terrible arguments. The arguments for the belief in chemtrails are based on belligerent ignorance, ad hominem, very culty, shaming the people who don't believe, and they're just angry. Like, I went out today, it's nice and overcast, so I'm realizing there's a whole segment of Trutherville, they're just mad, middle fingers up at the sky, screaming and raging at it. I'm like, what are you so mad about? It's ice. Elon Musk says Biden flying 320,000 unvetted migrants into the U.S. sets the stage for something far worse than 9/11. Now notice this. The left wing is terrified about what? Domestic violent extremists, domestic terrorists. That's all they're worried about. MAGA ban. The right, though, is worried about external threats. Elon Musk is worried about, like even Tucker Carlson, dark aliens, scary aliens. But they're also worried about illegal aliens and immigrants in general, who have, by the way, higher birth rates. It would solve one of their problems. They're always talking about we don't have a replacement rate here. We're dying off. Well, here we got a lot of new people, and you guys are mad about it. But my point of it is, why is it that the left thinks that domestic terrorists are the thing to be afraid of, and the right believes it's the external, the immigrants who represent a threat? And another connection to this, because this is all Psywar, and if it's bifurcated, if it's choose your own adventure, if you can look at the same quote facts and then pick a side and pick an interpretation, it's fake. That should be apparent by now. But notice too, 9/11 is associated with external terrorists. You know, Mohammed Atta, 33, lead hijacker, crashes into the tower 9/11, 8:46 a.m. 90 days prior on 6/11, which is an inverted 9/11, on 6/11, that would be the execution of Timothy McVeigh at 33 as well. But McVeigh is the domestic violent extremist equivalent of an Osama bin Laden or a Mohammed Atta, I guess you could say. So the 6/11 has been consistently associated with the right wing. Interestingly enough, that movie about saving the children, what was it? Oh, Sound of Freedom, was all about the Bible verse 6:11, like Timothy 6:11. And I'm like, wait, Tim Ballard 6:11, some Saint Timothy or something. But I'm like, wait, Timothy McVeigh. And then the right wing is all about putting on the quote armor of God. It's one of their mantras, which is another biblical, I think it's Ephesians 6:11. 6/11, 11/6, 11/6 is the date that the right-wing terrorists flood New York, flood the polls in the Batman movie. We've gone through all these connections, and it's very consistent. The 6/11, even the 1/6 thing. But of course, we're talking about how Musk is worried about immigrants doing a 9/11, and he's not even slightly worried about where it's really going to come from, the domestic violent extremists. And when they do it, when the next Timothy McVeigh sets off a bomb he got from Putin and it blows up off the coast of Seattle, and there's a 42-foot tsunami wiping out Kazakhstan, when that happens, they're going to blame X, Disease X, Elon Musk. Oh, we're not blaming the nukes or the white extremists. They were just victims of the misinformation that you didn't filter out. And then we'll have the online equivalent of a lockdown. All by design, because Musk is a fall guy for free speech. Lean Dion says 10:28 was the reported time of the second tower falling. That was the time on Marty McFly's alarm clock. You know those connections between Back to the Future? Yeah, the Back to the Future 9/11 connections, the Back to the Future Trump connections, it's voluminous. But the Twin Pines, Twin Towers, fascinating stuff there. 10/28, that's Bill Gates' birthday. It's also the day of the first Q drop. First Q drop was 10/28/17. A few other interesting connections with that number. There's an environmentalist who would change herself up to like a tennis net during some competition, and it said, "We only have 1,028 days left." Do you remember that? In fact, someone had done the math, and they said, "Okay, if we only have 1,028 days left, what is the last day in the world? What's the end of the world going to be?" And that would be March. The countdown began March 28th, 2022. So, does anybody here have a Gematria calendar calculator? Tell me the number of days between. So not 28 days later, but 1,028 days later will be January 20th, 2027. Okay, so we still have a couple years. I happen to think they're going to do the nuke in 2025. I don't think they're going to mess up the election. I think it's going to be 2025. And I think so based on some Christopher Nolan predictive programming in his Dark Knight Rises, where the character is told to put on a mask, not for himself, but to protect the people that he loves. Then he throws a COVID ball, smoke bomb, and creates a mushroom cloud. And of course, this is years before Christopher Nolan was tapped to do Oppenheimer. But he said, count to 5 and throw this. And I'm thinking, 2020 reference with the mask, count to 5, mushroom cloud, which would place it next year. I think it would just be too much for the, and something else too. There's so much going on that if they did a nuke, let's say on Wednesday, by Friday, we'd be talking about whatever Ye's doing. There's just so much going on, and nothing is more significant than anything else. Taylor Swift losing her voice on stage is way more significant than Putin threatening to launch Satan 2 at us. And I think that next year things will be kind of calmed down comparatively. So when they do the nuke, we'll have nothing else to talk about. The next thing, anyway, is civil war. We're waiting for civil war to happen. Okay, I got a comment on Gilded from Cygirl about, yeah, they could do a staged hit on Trump anytime. They could also seamlessly remove Biden. But anyway, this is the interesting part. We're talking about how much of this world is faked and how, because I'm suggesting here things are way faker than anybody in the alt media would imagine. And it's a shock. It's a paradigm shock to really look at it from its full perspective. What are the implications of fake nukes? But anyway, she asks, how many people are involved with this movie's cast of thousands? What's the budget? My answer is the military industrial complex's budget really goes into the PSYOP entertainment complex. I mean, think of that $78 million a day. We're not getting $78 million movies out of NASA whatsoever. Where's it going? It's going into perception management. We live in a vast Truman Show. Coming up in a month now, total solar eclipse, 4/8/2024. This is the talk of Trutherville and the rest of the world too, and everyone's kind of nonchalant about it, but it's a state of emergency for some reason. Like, look at this. From Indiana, IDHS Resources, indiana.gov, Department of Homeland Security. Before the eclipse, ensure you have a full tank of gas, ensure you're stocked on groceries, and have alternate communications. Now, what's going on here? They're suggesting that there's going to be an influx of traffic. That's going to be part of it. But everybody's going to be looking up. And it seems like there's a lot of hype about the need to be prepared for it, as though they're expecting something. And there are stages being set. I think right now in the New York subways, there's like 1,000 National Guard to make sure that the homeless population aren't stabbing people and shoving them into the tracks, which happens quite frequently. Nicotrama says last year was 1,000,000% guaranteed, but $1 billion is way bigger than $1 million, so it's happening this year for sure. Okay, what you're referencing is the gambler fallacy. And this one's fascinating. And the idea is that the probability is always the same. And just because the slot machine, you lose, you're like, well, it's got to win. It lost 20 times in a row. The next one, it's more likely to win. But no, the likelihood of it winning after a long streak of losses, or the likelihood of it maintaining a winning streak after a number of repeated wins, it's still the same regardless. So this is a fallacy that holds a lot of people in prophecy cults. They're like, the fact it didn't happen last year makes me more certain than it's going to happen last year because we just ruled out another year. And so it's a fallacious line of thinking that has people kind of accepting not happening as evidence of it becoming more likely. It's paradoxical, but it holds people in doomsday cults for lifetimes. It holds people in queue. The storm is coming. The storm is coming. It's like, don't you realize the storm was January 6th? When Trump was asked about the storm, like, what do you mean by the storm is coming? He said, you'll see. You'll find out. Okay, you'll find out. Well, what do you think the storm was? The storm was the pre-planned January 6th extravaganza that would mark the end of his first term. Like, he knew it was going to be a big show. It's the finale, the season finale, The Apprentice season 33 or whatever he's on right now. He never stopped The Apprentice. He's still on it. Drawn by Elephant Tusk says started 33 minutes ago. Correct. Oh, phones are open, by the way. And if there's anybody here who can't call in but wants to have a conversation in Discord, I put the Discord link in the server. And I also put it in the newsletters. Elon Musk said something very gross. I kind of don't want to repeat it. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to repeat it. Should I repeat this? 60 Minutes had said something kind of attacking him, and his response to 60 Minutes was, being attacked by 60 Minutes is like something really gross. Not going to read it. Let's move on to something a little more sane. Sorry, I mean, Pope Elon gets way too much air. Like, he gets way too much oxygen. He should go to Mars. Okay, Eric Bliss 23 posted this on Twitter. A few of these objects literally change direction mid-flight. One, especially at the 3-minute mark, comes from the top left, moving downward parallel with the lens, and then changes 3 vectors and travels away from the camera perpendicular to the lens. Not sure what can do that in space. Yeah, that last SpaceX launch, they sent something up there, it docked with the space station, and there were all kinds of bubbles just spewing out of it. And glurfs, they see nothing wrong with that. They're like, oh, it's space dust. So what Eric Bliss is saying here, space dust, rocket gunk, ice chips, bubbles, it doesn't matter. At this juncture, nothing should deviate from its original trajectory unless the object itself has a power source on it or something is physically affecting the object and forcing it to change vectors. And these things, again, look like bubbles. It looks like it. But what he says is this. At this juncture, it looks like they're doing it on purpose, changing directions in space, unless they're not telling us, and all those physics classes were a sham, but something ain't right with the video recording anymore. Does anybody here think that NASA is trying to let us know that they're faking it? Because I don't think so. I think they have been bad at it for so long, and they just never really had to raise their standards because they never had any real criticism until recently. Now, we're talking about, oftentimes here, about worldview and the Truman Show-like reality that people live in. And I've been looking at various philosophical schools of thought to see who else has come across this. Who else has realized that we live in a simulation? Of course, no one else, having looked at this, would have been apprised at how fake the news media is, or how integrated it is with entertainment. They wouldn't realize the monolithic nature of government, entertainment, academia, and the news media, and how integrated it is with the sole purpose of creating our world stage, our internalized concept of the world. So they wouldn't have the full information. Like, I often rip on objectivists for becoming subjectivists once they plug into the TV. But anyway, I was looking up this term hyperstition, which is a portmanteau of superstition and hyper, to describe something that is equipoised between fiction and technology. A hyperstition is a positive feedback circuit, including culture as a component. So it's just describing how fiction or how a simulation could become, through self-fulfilling prophecy, a real condition in a way, at least real to the people who are a part of it. And this is from a Wikipedia article on hyperstition. Social realities that constitute consensus reality are constantly produced and reproduced, changing through the extended use of signs and symbols, which contribute to the creation of a greater hyper reality. So what they're touching on here, I believe, would be what we call the world stage and the belief that people have in it, because there's nothing to challenge it. But it goes on. Hyperreality is a concept from post-structuralism that refers to the process of the evolution of notions of reality. And this is the part that I think pertains to right now, and why I call this a Truman Show-like reality. A state of confusion between signs and symbols invented to stand in for reality and direct perceptions. Hyperreality is a condition because of the compression of perceptions in reality and culture and media. What is regarded as real and what is understood as fiction are blended seamlessly. There is no longer any clear distinction where one ends and the other begins. So a perfect example of this is how the fiction of outer space has been added, attached onto the reality of the world below. The hard sciences at some point become infused with movie magic. One replaces the other. So I'm not saying that NASA isn't really doing science, they aren't real pilots, they aren't doing real rocketry. However, there's a point where it enters this augmented reality, and it's seamlessly blended with the fiction. And I think this was largely the message behind a lot of Kubrick's work about the merging of the movie and the real world. And it becomes sort of a self-reinforcing echo chamber, this closed system, and there's no way out of it. There's no outside perspective. It's just a big, massive echo chamber. All right, moving on. World stage hyperstitions. I guess I came across this because someone said that these psyops are constantly going on, but what about those of us who don't pay attention, who aren't affected by it? And my answer to him, this was on X, and I like X because it is like a public commons, and you can communicate with a lot of people at various levels of situational awareness. And I'm like, no, you can't not be a participant. You are, by nature of being in the world stage, in agreement with it, in this alternate reality game, you're tacitly approving of every augmentation they put out there. That your belief makes it real. Like I would say that the job of the soldier, you got all these soldiers in a standing army, even if they never fire a single round at an enemy, even if there's no war, just standing there believing what they've been told does its job. It maintains the status quo. They need a lot of people who believe in weapons of mass destruction, who are ready to fight the weapons of mass destruction. They need this because, again, it's like this hyperstition concept where they merge fiction and reality through the power of belief. And the more our society becomes a massive echo chamber and they remove any sort of real critics, I think the less likely that anybody's going to ever have any kind of questions from outside the box. Like we're really asking some out of the box questions. And when I mentioned that nukes are fake, yeah, it's kind of funny in a way, but it's actually kind of a serious proposition if you really follow it through. But the people who accept it tacitly, who believe that we're one button push away from everybody dying, never quite arrive at that. They never quite follow it through. Like, if fake, then what? If they fake the moon landing, then what? Either the Russians don't know, or they're in on it. And it's not logical to think that America tricked the Russians to win the space race. It's not logical to think that they would somehow not call out America on this. And that's one criticism of the moon landing hoax theory. They'll say, oh, if they faked it, the Russians would have called it out. Yeah, that's assuming they're not working together. This is what I came across when I started wondering, why aren't the right-wingers, why aren't the NRA types, NRA supporters calling out the gun grab psyops, which is what I thought the school shooting psyops were. I'm like, how come they're not calling them out? You want to undermine CNN? Where's James O'Keefe? Where's Project Veritas? We have pretty good evidence here that there's a left-wing agenda to go after the right by going after the Second Amendment. And nobody would say anything about it. And I'm like, wait, you're telling me that Armalite's going to be fined or they got to pay $73 million and they can't do their due diligence and look up what a psyop is? Then I realize, okay, they don't call out each other's psyops because they're on the same side. That's when I totally stepped outside of the political horseshoe. I got off of the fringe right, alt-right, conservative, anything like that. Nope. Sorry, they're all in collusion. It's actually one group, one puppeteer. Lean Dion says Musk pushes simulation theory, which is a cover for the simulated fake screen world. We're not fake, it's all fake. Yeah, he makes it absurd. And I'm glad you brought that up, because Musk has recently been saying things almost like they're trying to dilute this conversation. Like, oh, we might go into the simulation when the technology advances enough with all this deep fakery. No, we're already in one. We're in a deep faked reality. It happened before any of us were born, before Musk was born. He's a character on the world stage. And what we're talking about isn't supernatural. It's not even all that difficult to understand. Like, we're not talking about simulation theory as in some kind of like literal matrix. You know, I'm talking about the consensus worldview that we have does not comport with the real thing. And it's through this that they're able to manipulate people. They manipulate the simulation, the superimposed worldview that everyone's meant to share. But anybody calling it out as fake, is now going to be kind of conflated with these other ideas of simulation. And recently he's been mocking the idea that, for example, people still believe the news, LOL, or people who believe legacy media live in an alternate reality. These are talking points we would use, discussing the nature of alternate reality, ARGs, alternate reality games. But for him to say, legacy media types are in an alt reality, it's true. There are millions and millions of people who live in this alt reality. Just like you could point out people who are indoctrinated into religious worldviews live in an alt reality. What he's not pointing out is that he's speaking from an alt reality. Okay, moving on here. Mango Penguin says, who is legacy? Legacy media would be the major networks and anything non-social media. And it's kind of a pointless term because media has always been centralized and controlled, and we have the illusion of it being fragmented, but it's just an illusion. Alt media is an echo chamber, and all the talking heads say the same things, but they have more credibility because they're at street level with you. This is just classic, co-opting of what would be the people's media. And this is what they've done. This is why they have comedians and professional athletes. They get these celebrities to get behind trutherisms because they don't want this to be representative of an actual rebellion or rejection or intellectual revolt against the mainstream media, which is essentially the state church at this point. There's no principled rebellion against it because there's nothing outside of it. They have co-opted any outside thought. We talk a lot about these various orthodoxies, and the reason I mention stuff like even chemtrails is that these are like gateway drugs. And if they can get you in on one issue that you can never solve, that will agitate you and convince you that there is an assault on your life right then and there, then you're now in a massive limited hangout situation. And a limited hangout is this idea where they know the truth is going to leak. So they leak a little bit so they can control who gets that information and they can taint it appropriately. And I just think that the alt media consists of mostly limited hangouts. So they really dole out stuff. They breadcrumb, but they never, like this thing with Bohemian Grove. We just got the lowdown on what happens at Bohemian Grove. Nothing's going to come of it. There's not going to be a video. But it draws a lot of people in, and they're likely going to line up behind the MAGAs at the voting booth. A24 Civil War movie provokes timing debate amid some fearing an actual civil war. This is from HollywoodReporter.com. The Alex Garland film is sparking discussion about its release during a contentious election year. The idea of civil war actually keeps me up at night. The bulk of the reactions to Civil War seem to be coming from the left side of the spectrum, and their take is, this film is uncomfortably timing, and it will become MAGA fantasy fuel. So the right has been looking at this from a very conspiratorial angle. For them, it's predictive programming, and it's probably a continuation of Leave the World Behind, produced by the Obamas, which that movie is a perfect example of both predictive programming and concurrent programming. It has both, and it's ongoing. And there have been many mass media, like actual popular media stories about how, look, people are comparing these AT&T blackouts to Leave the World Behind. It's constantly being referenced. And why? Because they made this movie your frame of reference on purpose, so they can steer your interpretation of future events. That's how predictive programming works. And we're living through it right now. We're watching it. Just like post 9/11, everybody compared it to Independence Day, ID4 by Roland Emmerich, The Falling Buildings. It's just like Independence Day. Well, now it's just like Leave the World Behind. But the right is looking at Civil War as something like that, a follow-up. But the left is worried that this is going to be MAGA fantasy fuel. So one reader on a subreddit, and again, Reddit is where lefties go to get radicalized, and Discord and Telegram is where righties go. Quote, the idea of another American Civil War happening today keeps me up at night. This is a movie I want to keep far away from. Even if it's based on a political scenario far removed from our own, I don't want to entertain the notion of something so horrible. Another one said, there are other Timothy McVeighs out there. We were just talking about him. There are other McVeighs out there who would be like, this movie is exactly what this country needs. The danger is that right-wing groups are not known for media literacy or nuance. And a psychotic gang of rednecks committing terrorism to own the libs might be obvious criticism to us, but it might be interpreted as a role model for MAGA groups if it's not portrayed carefully. So they're worried that this is going to get MAGA motivated. Someone else here says, I know a ton of people who don't want to see it because it's uncomfortable to watch a movie that we might be living in 4 or 5 years. It's political porn, using political tensions going on as a crutch to get people emotionally invested. Now that would describe every single mainstream media story. Political porn using political tensions to get people emotionally invested. And the mass media is an emotional abuser. Moths in space. Okay, we were talking about bubbles in space. Moths have made a comeback, and this is not the first time. We've seen moths, we've seen flies, but the latest fake X launch, timestamp 13 minutes and 20 seconds. Can a glurf please explain this? Do we have any glurfs in the house? We're looking at a moth. This is during the launch. So you know this rocket part. This is like a Disney ride. They do have a camera on a model rocket in a warehouse somewhere with a green screen behind it. But it's all special effects. This is the thing that we saw the mouse on. We've seen other things as well. The other day we were talking about the space squid. Lean Diaz says military-aged MAGAs. Yeah, they're worried about military-aged MAGAs. But notice, they're not worried about immigrants. They're worried about Americans. The left is scared of Americans. And the right is scared of immigrants. How does that work? It's a bifurcated Cywar split down the middle. And this is the point of it. I keep mentioning the split. And it has to do with, I believe, collective schizophrenia. That when you make a deal with the devil, that is the mainstream media, when you say, you are an authority over my mind, over my perceptions, that I'm going to take your screen at face value, the instant you step in that box, with every single story you take in, you're actually being split. You're having to choose a side, or you're unconsciously choosing a side, or you've already been categorized, so everything's going to feed you into that side. But it divides you from the very beginning, in addition to divorcing you from objectivity itself. Objectivity is a hate crime these days. Reality is now fluid. And this is also by design. We're all in various competing belief systems, and they're all mutually exclusive. You couldn't believe two of them at the same time, but they can all coexist. We can all coexist like that bumper sticker. And all the different religions can coexist because they have been replaced by a new one that nobody knows is a religion. All this conspiratorial talk about the one world order religions coming, it's already here. It's your MSM. Space is your heaven. And heaven's got moths, as you can see on the screen here. Pancho says, what if you choose not to decide? Pancho Lefty says, what if you choose not to decide? See, that's kind of like the Mandela effect. Jiff or Jiffy. They don't give you the option, I don't remember. With the mass media, it's the same thing. You're not supposed to choose not to decide. Choosing not to decide is the definition of skepticism, which means suspension of judgment. I don't have enough information to take a side. That's my position on everything. So I don't make a decision. I'm like, I'm not choosing. I'm going to withhold judgment until I have enough information. And if that leaves me as a non-believer, as an agnostic with a ton of question marks, I'm fine with that. My curiosity is intact. They didn't shut it down with false explanations and lies. When I see lies, I don't cover up for those lies. Those lies, in fact, pique my curiosity. Okay, moving on here. Yep. German man vaccinated 217 times had no side effects. No medical symptoms. He's probably got track marks like a lot of these vax junkies. But yeah, no negative symptoms. So good for him. He's just ultra healthy now. He can have as much undercooked bat soup as he wants. Now, I'm wondering, why would you do this? I mean, if you're getting paid, I can understand it, or if you're getting Big Macs. Commenters are saying he must have been an alien from another planet, or the food is RNA. So many people here just don't believe it. Now, that's what I call the power of marketing. How many people who tried this didn't make it? Likely not true. Sounds like propaganda. It's a psyop, never happened. Of course, choose what you want to believe, of course. If you're an anti, doubt the story. If you're a pro, you'll probably believe it's true. All right, moving on here. We're going through my minds.com/infinite plane society. Governor Hochul to ban anyone from riding the subway or taking a bus who's convicted of a violent crime. National Guard will be at the subway for bag checks. So this is in New York. The subways where you go, and if you want to look at some of the videos on Twitter, you'll find it's not uncommon to see people being shoved into the pads of these things. It's insane, but they're taking some action.
Whether you're a commuter or a transit worker. Point one, I'm redeploying nearly 1,000 members of the New York State Police, MTA Police, and MTA National Guard to conduct bag checks in the city's busiest transit stations.
Now, my only interest in this story here is simply that many National Guardsmen in the subways, it seems like they're setting the stage for a psyop.
About the resources that we can bring to this situation. So we'll be having 750 members of the New York National Guard, as well as another 250 personnel from state and MTA police. You'll start seeing them at the tables, making sure that weapons are not being brought in, working in concert with our New York State Police, as well as our NYPD. Because no one heading to their job or to visit family or to go to a doctor appointment should worry that the person sitting next to them possesses a deadly weapon. They shouldn't worry about whether someone's going to brandish a knife or gun. That's what we're going to do at these checkpoints. Number two, I'm proposing that we amend New York State laws in this session in a matter of weeks.
Okay, there you go. Dinah South says, under what authority does this witch deploy these guys to violate the Fourth Amendment? Yeah, that's probably what it's about. Getting rid of the presumption of innocence. And we've been hit with so much propaganda to suggest that, you know what, we can't presume innocence anymore. Someone in here mentioned, I believe it was Nicotramus, it's a placebo. You know, it might have been 217 doses of a placebo. And at one point, I was willing to just take the shot directly in the jugular just to show it doesn't matter. But I do think it might be the placebo, but I do believe in psychosomatics. And I'm pretty sure that if an anti were to have taken that many, they would have died. Probably before the first needle even went through their skin all the way. They would die from shock and fear. And if the placebo and if psychosomatics play a role, then what is the role of the truther if they're spreading fear about something innocuous? They are the ones killing people. If there are any negative side effects, if people are dying because of it, guess who's at fault here? The antis. Because you put it out there. You put it in their heads, and they got placeboed to death. So that's what you get for taking a side in the mind war. You end up carrying water, for the MSM. You have blood on your hands. Isabel Ann says they're letting it get bad to justify cameras on all trains in stations. Well, you know where they didn't have a camera? They didn't have a camera in the subway train where Frank James fired 33 rounds. And that was right around this time of year in 2022. IFEPA73 says papers, please. Yeah, shouldn't they just have the TSA there? Like, why do you need National Guard with guns? Just bring the TSA. But they're also worried about violent people. Like how do they know if you have a history of violence? And maybe you just haven't been caught yet. G33 says, I get my fourth violated every day on the way to work, into work, on the way out, had issues with it before, and they laugh at the fourth. Yeah, I think this is one of the side effects of these news stories, these news events where something bad happened, lots of people died. This is who did it, this is why, here's the manifesto, let's arrest him, he's going to get the death penalty. Case closed. The media was the judge, jury, and executioner. It's the lynch mob media. And that mentality, and the public goes along with it. That guy's guilty, this one's innocent. No, we're all innocent until proven guilty beyond any shadow of a doubt in a court of law. But apparently, no, we're all guilty. We're all super spreaders, carbon super spreaders, violence super spreaders, and virus super spreaders until proven otherwise. But I think they get people to acquiesce to this through constant barrages of propaganda to make them feel insecure. And it works. Okay, let's listen to Nick Fuentes talking about how Trump is effing hot and Hitler-esque, and how he wants to die for the personhood of Donald Trump, and he doesn't want to be a stale old cracker like McCain, but he wants to be a hottie like Trump.
Trump is, he's like 80 years old almost, but he looks fucking hot. All these other 80-year-old guys, all these other 80-year-old white guys look like this. Have you ever realized, a lot of people make fun of Trump for his look, but John McCain was like the same age, and he looked like a dork. Like, this is what John McCain, you know, this is what John McCain looked like in his 70s, or I don't know how old he was in this picture. And then you look at Trump.
Now, this is a virgin speaking, an incel, who wants to lower the age of consent and turn teenage girls into baby incubators for the white nationalist state. And he's going through the various photos of Donald Trump and how he looks like Mussolini, he looks like a tough guy, he looks like Hitler, etc., just gushing.
And Trump just looks like a beast. So people say, oh, you're orange, your hair's stupid. He looks fucking awesome. He looks hot. So you could either...
Second time he called him hot and he called him a beast. Now, that's interesting. I mean, Trump might be the beast in a sense. I mean, there's the people who think he's like kind of anti-Christy. He does have a Biff Tannen vibe about him at times. Okay, let's play one more clip here. This is, again, Nick Fuentes, America First. He had dinner with Trump and Ye when he was Ye's campaign manager. So he's not a nobody. Nick Fuentes is pretty up there near the head of the MAGA snake. He's right up there with all the top ideologues like Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA and others. Friends with Ollie Alexander. Time traveler. The American Oracle is what he calls himself. And likely sex offender. Here's the part where he says, if Donald Trump gives the order, we will follow it. We will die for the personhood of Donald Trump. And what does that mean, die for the personhood of Donald Trump? If Trump gives the order, we will follow. We have a willingness to, quote, die for the personhood. Okay, I can't handle anymore Nick Fuentes actually talking, so we'll move on. Marjorie Cameron is asked about Jewish space lasers and had a negative reaction.
Talk about Jewish space lasers, and really, why don't you fuck off? How about that?
Thanks. Thank you very much.
All right, she doesn't want to talk about it. You know, she was pretty happy to talk about Q back in the day and how Q's a patriot, but now you ask her about Jewish space lasers, and she blows up. Breaking, 1,000 National Guard deployed across all New York City subway stations. 1,000 members have been deployed following the governor's announcement this week. G33 says, Aldous Huxley said, we will lovingly embrace our servitude. You know, absolutely. And the movie Leave the World Behind did have an allusion to the Huxleys. It mentioned the Huxleys. And I often reference the raft. You know, when penguins flock together, they pile up together on the water, they form what's called a raft. And we live today, this is the age of Aquarius, the age of the information age. And the information is being dumped. But it's an info war. And it's meant to confuse, to discombobulate, and to move us into a realm of subjectivity so we can be controlled by those who have their feet firmly planted in objective reality. And What I have been describing here is what Huxley mentioned as being the sea of irrelevance that would flood the zone and make everything equal with everything else. Putin's about to nuke us. Taylor Swift, her voice cracked. These are stories of equal weight to the people of the world stage. The people of the tell lie vision, the people who have accepted the lie, they really don't have any kind of way to put these things into context in which one thing is more important than the other. It's just a nonstop deluge. So what we have done is we have rafted together atop this sea of irrelevance where they don't have any coherent structure in which to plug their information in. Just choose your own adventure. In our case, we do have a coherent structure. We recognize the world stage as a model, that they are making it confusing by design because that's actually part of its structure. It's meant to be contradictory. It's meant to be incoherent. It's how they keep everyone in a state of control. Visual illiteracy, the inability to tell real from fake. I mean, people's realities have been very much compromised, and it's hard to overstate it, but it's also difficult to convey it because everybody is brainwashed in the exact same way. We're in such a massive echo chamber here. Okay, someone asked NASA a question here, which is, why don't we get a live feed of anything landing on the moon?
Just kind of explain why we're not getting to see these images live. The Apollo 11 landing was broadcast live. Why now don't we have the technology to see all of this live?
This ain't easy.
It's not easy. Space is hard, but the moon is harder.
Space is hard, but the moon is harder. I heard the moon's made of petrified wood. Have any of you heard about this? At least that's what I take out of the moon rocks being made out of petrified wood. What else could that mean? Stephen Colbert, and these late night government gestures are never funny. I think you hear the laugh tracks, you assume it's funny, kind of like, everything else. You don't pay it too much attention. It just kind of gets a pass. But looking at him now, this guy is just a pure government jester, a script reader. And this is meant to be comedy, but it's not really comedy. It's training people to laugh at the people who notice the truth. It's like the 2 minutes of hate. They tell you who to hate. But anyway, he's very misanthropic. He's internalized a lot of the self-hate that we're supposed to have internalized. And he's suggesting that maybe it's time for human beings to relinquish their role in the world as any kind of decision makers, and let's just hand it over to AI. Which kind of harkens back to Savior Machine, David Bowie, 1969, about President Joe handing over control of the world to this Savior Machine that would cure hunger and war, etc. But I think we're at that point. So here's Stephen Colbert kind of foreshadowing what's to come.
I'm not that worried about AI. I just doesn't get my blood going to get worried about AI. I think of some positive aspects of it. I mean, I've seen how humans have handled history, and not great. And so
He's talking to that individual who says that human beings are hackable animals, by the way.
Make big decisions programmed by fellows with compassion and vision. I'm ready for the machines to tell us what to do.
I'm ready for the machines to tell us what to do. Now, here's the problem with this. They're going to bring about some convincing AI bot. It'll be like Sophia, but way more convincing. And people will listen to it. But it's going to be some guy in a booth somewhere with a microphone speaking through it. I thought about this for some time. It would be very easy for this area to be exploited, people's willingness to believe. And we're moving into a realm of, it's like idol worship in a sense. And all they need to do is convince people that a higher power has arrived and it can fix everything, and people will go with it. Yep, the Wizards of AI says elephant tusks. The guy from ChatGPT has a very world stagey name, Sam Altman. The Altman, we We got von Neumann from the who coined the term the singularity. You know, a point where man's evolution is now in his own hands. But the idea, of course, of new man being implied with the singularity. But Sam Altman, but when you look at the word, it actually is indistinguishable from AI man. And he's the entrepreneur and investor known for open AI, which is suggestive here that, you know, like with Musk, we're dealing with somebody who's just fake, a world stage character, a piece on the stage. But it looks like Sam AI man, or Altman, Sam AI. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Ready for the robots to take over. Oh, look, the Chinese forgot to curve the Earth. They have to fix that. And just like that, the Chinese forgot to curve the Earth. They're doing a spacewalk. There's a couple different takes on it that I have here. Not all spacewalks are underwater. And we're looking at a combination, a composite. There's just various aspects of it. But the parts that are underwater are generally like the helmet cam view of the astronaut crawling all over the thing, tugging on cords, moving things around, looking busy. Jake the A-hole says, AI is the ultimate scapegoat for anything the elites have planned. AI can be blamed for any evil deed and the public will buy it. Tidal wave hit Seattle, AI did it. Yeah, they'll say that AI propagation of fake news somehow radicalized somebody into buying into some ideology. Then he hooks up with Russians, buys a nuke, blows it up beneath Seattle, right there off the coast. They've been hyping this up for some time, and they're exploiting the public's misunderstanding about what it is. But from a Metascript perspective, predictive programming, we can look back to the Terminator and Skynet. And it just seems like whenever the AI, the higher intelligence, whenever it shows up, it decides, you know, like in Wall-E, it's called auto, like autopilot. But whenever these things, or in the 100, it's called All-E, and it's this lady in red, but she's an avatar, an AI creation. But they arrive at this conclusion that, okay, we're taking over because man can't control himself, and we're likely going to have to depopulate, nuke the world, and start again with a seed population in an ark of some kind. Reoccurring theme in many of these stories. But what they're acclimating us to, of course, is that there is going to be this higher intelligence that isn't going to be influenced by emotions or greed. This is why they've given us characters like Trump. So they can point and say, hey, look, this is what happens when you get a corrupt, greedy human and put him in a position of power. Robots, AI, yeah, they have no need for such worldly things. They're objective. So they're trying to convince us again that you have a pure mind, because human beings are, of course, not pure. G33, Terminator, excellent programming. Yes, and that's also James Cameron, who did the Titanic, where it splits in two. One of them goes vertical, people jump off like the Twin Towers. And on 9/11, James Cameron was at the site of the Titanic, filming Ghosts in the Abyss. The Abyss and 9/11 are both referenced in Revelation 9/11 about Abaddon, the destroyer, or Apollyon in the Abyss. Apollyon means Terminator. So there's a strong correlation with the sinking of the Titanic, the sinking of the Twin Towers, the nuking of America, all of it connected to this Skynet and this judgment of man, T2, Judgment Day. But Cameron is a big-time meta-scripter in all of this, and the symbols and the numbers are always there. It's like, oh yeah, he made 33 dives to the Titanic. And in between, he stayed at his $33 million mansion. But the Titanic as a metaphor for the West sinking has been a reoccurring theme. They kind of brought that back with Leave the World Behind when the oil tanker called White Lion crashes into America. And that has just so much programming built into it. White Lion, first slave ship, it crashes. This is emergency broadcast 1619. 1619 was the year of that slave ship, White Lion. But it was an oil tanker, suggestive of climate change coming to finally, our chickens are coming home to roost, like Obama's pastor had said. Like America's getting what it deserves. It's reckoning for its overconsumption of fossil fuels, climate catastrophe. America's getting what it deserves for the slavery and for what it did. All of its original sins are going to be highlighted now at this time with the 1619 versus 1776. The Civil War is going to go back that far. That's what they laid out in Leave the World Behind. But the idea here, of course, is that America is the Titanic that's about to sink. The Tower of Babel is about to fall. And that's why the movie had planes falling like crazy. And it had references to Donnie Darko, which came out on 119. Lots of 119 references, planes falling, which 119 was the day the Space Station movie came out, which falls, of course. Elephant Tusk says, the world has never been more insane. Jake says, why is nobody afraid of Middle Eastern terrorists anymore, but they're scared of AI? Yeah, that's what I mean. Whatever we're told to be afraid of. Scared of AI. I notice there's this tendency of some to look at it with suspicion, like artists and others are like, do we use it? Do we not use it? Is it the end? And like, you know what? You're already using high-speed internet. There's no reason not to embrace this new labor-saving device. They're so far ahead of us. You have to stay up. Like ESPN hiring a bunch of, well, not hiring, using a lot of fake authors that don't exist to write these stories. Elephant Tusk says they have digital twins of all of us. Yeah, I was thinking if Elon Musk does start sending people to Mars, the rich people who want to escape the Civil War, all he has to do is get them to buy the tickets, and he could just delete them, whatever it takes. Wood chipper, exterminate. He could just, basically, what I'm saying is, it sounds kind of diabolical, but, he could take your money, you disappear, and nobody would know because your digital twin is going to be super happy up there on Mars, and nobody would know the difference. There's a movie or a TV series on Amazon called Upload about this digital afterlife that you can opt into if you don't want to go to the traditional version of heaven. And while you're there, unlike heaven, in the digital version, your family can interact with you with a VR headset and an app. New Ghostbusters Frozen Empire comes out on 3/22. Anytime I see Frozen, Frozen Empire, Game of Thrones, Winter is Coming, I think Nuclear Winter, which is all tied into The Division and Tom Clancy. Okay, let's see. Some breaking news here. It looks like Hannah Reid, the one who gave Alec Baldwin the .44 that he used to shoot the guy that had Donald Trump's birthday and to also kill Helena Hutchins, she has been convicted of involuntary manslaughter for the fatal shooting of cinematographer Helena Hutchins by Baldwin. So she's been convicted. We looked at the story. It's all definitely fake and staged. It happened close by here. Fascinating numerology. Stage Union 44. Gun was a 44. This girl who is now convicted of manslaughter. In the picture, she had a shirt that had like an upside down cross and it said sinner. And on her belly, on her abdomen, she had a tattoo of a big black spider. So I'm like, spider, sinner, upside down cross, hands him the gun. This thing happens. There's something going on here. Some kind of subtext. And weirdly, after the shooting, Alec Baldwin's ex-wife Kim Basinger was spotted at a quote goth club dancing. That's how she responded to her husband shooting somebody inadvertently by an accident, by dancing at a goth club. And I thought, there's got to be a connection between this Hannah Reid and Kim Basinger and Baldwin. Did they set him up? And it turns out that there's some predictive programming for this. There's a scene in Wayne's World where Garth is being coerced by Kim Basinger to kill her husband. Just kind of a weird subtext. But I'm looking at this Black Widow spider on her belly and I'm thinking that's kind of odd. So I had my eye on this. Next thing you know, and this was after the scene and they're taking it down, on the Rust movie set, one of the crew members was bitten by a spider and they thought they were going to have to amputate his arm. Rust crew member may lose arm after spider bite on set. They might have to amputate. Rust member hospitalized. Anyway, they ended up saving his arm, but I'm saying it was kind of strange that Hannah Reed had this tattoo and all this kind of like imagery around her, and then this guy gets his arm nearly bitten off. Or rather, I guess it would have been, here we go. This is the shirt. It says, always a sinner, never a saint. It's got the devil hand and an upside down cross. Normal stuff, completely normal. And you look there, she has a Black Widow spider. Very ominous. Also the bricks behind her, very suggestive here, very Mason-y, as we might say. Thank you, Multi C0 Dagger. We appreciate the support here. And, as always, this think tank is a product of everyone's effort. Our comments, our thoughts, our research, pulling it all together into the raft. And we're about to swell in size. We're going to blow up here very soon. On 3/11, I get the next batch of Autohoaxology 101. And I got an email this morning. This was kind of random. I was just, by coincidence, I was actually having a conversation about how it'd be nice if I could find somebody to read some audiobooks, because audiobook readers are constantly bailing on me once they start reading the texts. Like, they don't want to be attached to it. Well, I got messaged that I was going to be part of a beta test with virtual readers for audiobooks. So any of my books on Amazon can now be converted into audiobooks with a click of a button. So Secret Religion of the Elite and Autohoaxology 101, these are all going to be audiobooks. And I think it only takes like an hour for it to be produced, which is way faster than finding someone to do it, getting a royalty agreement made, paying them, having them record it, a few weeks later, listening to a preview, submitting it, getting the approval. It takes months to get an audiobook produced. Now, it takes a few minutes. And I don't have to split royalties. And it's using Amazon or Audible's own proprietary software, virtual readers, so they sound real, cutting edge stuff. You can pick the voice, pick inflections, rate of speech. You have a lot of control over it. But I'm using this, of course, this platform, Amazon and Audible, to get Autohoaxology into the search results. We want to make sure that when that term is used, it always leads to us. It's unco-optable. And it's very toxic from their point of view. You won't get any of these mainstream alternative truthers to ever confront this because it undermines their entire business. Their entire business model is based on regurgitating mainstream lies and adding their spin. And if we say those mainstream lies are lies from the get-go and they're fake, well, then they're reacting against something fake, and they can't have that. All right, moving on. This is not deepfake. This is Putin singing Blueberry Hill. I don't know if there's any deeper meaning to this.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill. On Blueberry Hill, where I found you. The moon stood still on Blueberry Hill.
That's Goldie Hawn. Kevin Costner. What was he recently on? Kevin Costner, by the way, he was in Dances with Wolves. And if you've watched that Avatar 2 James Cameron film, it's just Dances with Wolves all over again. Totally a ripoff. Yeah, I don't know what that was. It just showed up in my feed. Here's Ye talking about something. I guess this is sort of related to that boxer who said he was abused at the Bohemian Grove. Ye says they control Shaq, Charles Barkley, LeBron, and they control Jay-Z and Beyonce, but not me. Michael Jordan's dad, Bill Cosby's son, people go missing in Hollywood.
Minister Farrakhan, I love you, but the way you read that, I took that as a slight. You know what I'm saying? I'm taking no disrespect from nobody, so let's get on the phone and let's talk that out. I don't care who you are. I ain't taking no slice from.
There are times when Ye comes across as authentic. We talk about these characters, these world stagers, but there are some characters, some individuals who could conceivably not be in the know. They could be insulated. And I would specifically point out those who are born into it, whose parents are part of some organizations. Like I think he's the son of a Black Panther. His father is deep in media. So there's just some examples of characters like Pete Davidson, for example, whose father was one of the stars of 9/11, who died at 33, quote, died. And it's possible that you're raised in this. There's no way they're going to tell you how it all works when you're a kid. You're not born with a security clearance. So when I look at someone like Ye, and you look at the people following him, he's being stalked, gang stalked, gate kept. I think there's a chance that he could be like basically Truman in a Truman Show, and he has an inkling that something is off, but he's not able to put the pieces together.
All that away. Still, Forbes, who hate me, right, had to write net worth 400 million. Jesus is king. God loved me.
That's more important than thinking of life.
Anyway, moving on. This is just being brought up in relation to this Ryan Garcia. Look, I'm going to point this out. High Impact Flicks says, I appreciate that people are staying focused on this. And this is a reference to somebody having a picture here of condensation trails behind planes. This is not something you can stand on. Like when I said the other day that chemtrails give you AIDS, I was being hyperbolic, but I was making a point that this entire premise is hyperbolic. It's all exaggeration. It's not something you can stand on because it's an argument made against a backdrop of decades of research that automatically contradict the premise, and it shoehorns you into an alt climate change belief. But some of these big channels like High Impact Flicks, why are they doing this? Are they shilling, or do they just not know? And then what I'm going to find most interesting though is, will these big channels be capable of saying I was wrong all this time? That's what I'm looking forward to. Like, can somebody at that level, can they even handle it? Or would they just break? Will they have to stand by it? Will they have to cling to it? Anufal says, ma chemtrails. Yeah, exactly. Ma chemtrails. Ma climate change. Any ma. Whatever they're clinging to, these bitter clingers, my dead people, my fake dead kids. I got people covered in theatrical blood, rolling on the ground crying. And it's like, I don't care about this issue. How dare you not care about my issue, my current thing? Look, you don't care about it. You say you care about Lahaina and Madu kids who were zapped by Chinese space lasers, but the next day, you're talking about Taylor Swift and how she's going to ruin the election for Trump. Like, you don't care. The people who pretend to care don't care. Okay, let's see here. Donald Trump, low on cash, meets with Elon Musk. Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone has got Trump derangement syndrome. Main conversation today, Ryan Garcia doing the Me Too thing about the Bohemian Grift. And here he is talking to Tate about how he was forced to witness bad things happening at the Grove.
Oh, fuck, bro. They held me down and they made me watch little kids get raped. I don't give a fuck anymore.
Where?
Bro, they fucking took me to the fucking woods, bro, and they fucking...
All right, well, that's, again, Ryan Garcia talking to Andrew Tate, who you can trust because he has 33 Bugattis. And, again, if Andrew Tate was there, I think he would have been probably one of the people restraining others or something. I mean, he's one of the baddies, I'm just saying. Based on his background. Like, he seems like he would have been an invite. He had his designated parking alongside Alex Jones. But the story here is professional boxer Ryan Garcia reveals he has proof Bohemian Grove is real. Yeah, it's real. But that he was watching this stuff, come on. Obviously, we're looking at some kind of a delusion or some type of attention-getting behavior, but that doesn't stop people from spreading this information because it confirms their bias. Like that clip where Hillary Clinton mentions the name of the interviewer and they assume that that's the name of the actress playing Clinton, and she accidentally gave herself up. Illusion Warfare posted this: inflatable HIMARS in Ukraine. Look, inflatable F-16s, decoy models, planes, rocket launchers. So many examples. Let me go ahead and play this clip.
They're made by Inflatech, a company in the Czech Republic. The company says it has more than 30 different types of decoys, ranging from tanks to armored vehicles, aircraft, and howitzers. The company even makes a model that looks like the US-made HIMARS rocket systems. They're made by...
Okay, so the question is, when Ukraine puts all these inflatables out there, are they tricking the Russians? Like when America faked the moon landing to trick the Russians. Did the Russians not know? Do they not read American conspiracy theories? My point here is that the fakery is ubiquitous. They're not fooling each other. They're fooling the cameras by design, because the cameras are part of this production, and they're fooling the people. That's how this works. The decoys are to fool the Trumans in their Truman shows. It's not meant to trick the other side. If this was some big, deep military secret and they're tricking the other side, it wouldn't be on the front page news. Mango Penguin says, do they rent them out for parties? Right. But I'm like, this is hilarious. And what Illusion Warfare says is this, and this has been going on forever. Decoy tanks, World War II, fake military bases, fake ships. You got endless examples. Mass casualty simulations. Fakery is the rule, not the exception. It's not a mere tactic. Too many truthers who are still in the alt media universe think, oh yeah, you guys pay too much attention to the fakery, but it's about to get real. No, it's not. If it's been fake this whole time, it's not suddenly going to get real. There's not just a switch they can flip. Everyone's like, it just wouldn't happen. The point of it is, they think fakery is a tactic they use once in a while to make the real stuff realer. It's a provocation. No, this is the Truman Show. It's really good news, but it's really hard to accept. A lot of people are married to the nightmare. They're covered in fake blood. They virtue signal off of their rage, raging at the cirrus clouds, crying for the fake dead kids. You're being milked. You're being tapped. They're taking your adrenochrome, not by excising your pineal gland, but by emotionally vampirizing you through their psychodramas. All right, look here. This is, again, Illusion Warfare. You have to follow this account, Les Luther. He says, why isn't there an abundance of videos showing the inflatables being hit? Right. You have a bunch of tanks outside your town there. Why wouldn't you shoot them? And they would all just, presumably they would pop or they would deflate. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Rhetorical question, of course, he says, Black Mirror gives you set... Oh yeah, this is obviously the case. We're looking at like a movie superimposed onto reality and nobody questions it. Commenter says, that's new for me. We show this stuff once in a while, and I need to go back and add some stuff to some archives. We've talked about decoys quite a lot, because in 2020 we were looking at all these tent setups, testing facilities, where if you only watch the news and you stay a safe distance, you think there's all kinds of activity. It's like a beehive in there. And the news media hypes it up. Like they show you ground zero, epicenter of the epidemic, chaos in the ER. And you're watching stock footage, but you assume it's going on nearby. And you see these testing centers outside, and it gives you the impression there's a lot more going on. Here, we had these big external refrigeration trucks outside of the hospitals. So you constantly would see, if you were watching the news, you would see shots of bodies being carted out of the hospital and they're put into these external freezers. And it creates the perception that the hospital's full. But the reality of it is, they closed the internal morgues, necessitating the external ones. Why? They said it was because they wanted to reduce the transmission of the you-know-what, but the fact is, it was for theater. The empty testing centers, nobody's really using them, but from a distance it looks like they are. So I would say that much of what we experienced then was a decoy operation. But the inflatable tanks, inflatable planes, they just have to fool cameras, which they do. But then what's more, today they can do it all with computer models, computer simulations. How many times have we seen just in recent months, like after 10/7, all kinds of people were like, look at this horrible thing that happened over here. Oh, it was a clip from a video game. How many video game clips were shared with this Russia-Ukraine thing, where most of the content, most of the so-called war footage is actually straight out of video games? And people can't tell the difference. They cannot tell the difference between real and fake. They believe what they want to believe. So many examples of this. Video game footage misrepresented as missile attack. How a video game has been used to create fake news. Video game footage superimposed with news banner. Arma 3, this video game footage, is not the war in Gaza. War-themed video game fuels wave of misinformation. Troops battling through burning streets, missiles taking down fighter jets, drones pulverizing tanks, dramatic visuals, fake. Video game misrepresented as footage of Ukraine invasion. And the people who believe this stuff are downloading it into their minds. Believers, not skeptics, the believers just absorb it. They believe it, and they tweet it, and they move on. They don't go back and fact check it. They just consumed it. Those of us who are skeptical are like, wait, that's probably fake. And we never just accept it. We don't give it some kind of just tacit approval, which they do, which is why we term them auto-believers. Auto-believers believe what they see. What we are doing here is the complete opposite. Oh, let me turn the ringer back on. I think we just had a caller. Okay, phone's on. Phone number's on the screen, 505-349-0420. These are just a few examples, and I just searched with keywords video game war footage. Post shows video game footage, not the war. Now, if people can be fooled, and this is a question that I raise in Autohoaxology 101, are you dupable? Your answer is yes. If you're answering no, you're naive. But if people can be fooled with video game footage and confuse it for real war footage, then is it possible that people could be fooled with fake space travel? Or is that not possible? Oh no, we could be fooled with video game tanks and video game drones, but no way they could fake space. No way. It'd be easier to go to Jupiter than to simulate it in a movie. They will make these arguments all the time. But it's choose your own reality, piece it together. There's not any real fact checking. James Hawk says, the moon landing was real because I saw it on TV. Yeah, it's called CSAY. CSAY, the visual equivalent of hearsay. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hey, what's going on, Tim?
Just looking at the decoy operations that people misinterpret as real.
Yeah. Just, people just believe anything. Now when I see stuff, any headline or anything in the news, I sit back and I laugh because it's all a big joke, and I'm like, who's the joke for? Is it for them or is it for people like us?
I hear this quite a bit, and I don't think we are welcome insiders. I don't think we're meant to be privy to this information. I think we represent loose cannons and a threat to their closed system, and that's why we're marginalized.
But you don't feel like they put there, because they could pretty much have it like any way they want it, Hunger Games type sort of scenario or whatever. But I feel like they enjoy some amount of competition, or at least, they haven't, we're getting deeper into it, I feel like, or I don't know. People have been asleep for known history. And I've been looking into history a lot, and they got layers and layers and layers to this game, and I'm like, all right, did they just write all this shit out in the past, 150 years, or, what amount of this shit is real?
Yeah, I look at.
'Cause I have no idea.
Well, if history is written by the rich and powerful to tell their story, it's Big Brother's story, his story, and media is the same, then I think it's safe to say that history is just a record of mainstream media going really far back. And so you can trust it if you want. I trust it as much as I trust mainstream media.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, because as you say, the fake events of today are histories, or, yeah, they're going to be in the books, and
Oh
it's all
yeah.
a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Like we can spend years, I mean, we could spend years and years and years deconstructing these events and we know, like we have knowledge on the matters. So we're not, is it real or fake? We're way past that. But I do so in full knowledge that the official version is going to be in textbooks and they're going to be graded on it. And if they don't answer the lies accordingly, they're not going to pass. Like that's the power of this thing. They know that what we say will eventually be scrubbed or burned. And alt media is designed that way. They're burning alt media all the time. But um, yeah, in the end, I think they win. That their story is the final version.
Yeah, they're slam dunking on us, and I think the only way out of it would be for us to, uh, you know, learn the sciences and the magic, and compete with them on that level, because these people are out of hand.
Well,
And
my focus
yeah,
is definitely that. We're reverse engineering the mind control, cult mind control, covert influence, perception management, all the manipulation. I think that's the starting point is uh, undoing all of that first. Because if you
yeah,
haven't undone that, you're in no position to challenge the dominant story, and alt media is lost. And the only people who have any chance of unraveling it are the people who aren't falling for those counter narratives.
you're you're killing it, and the IPS is killing it. All the music, it's it is the only way really to free your mind, because if you're still believing, if you see, Alex Baldwin shoot some lady, and the first thing you think is, oh man, Alex Baldwin just shot some lady, that's crazy. And not, I chuckle when I see shit like that. And it's everything. It's damn near everything is some sort of little, it's all in this box that they got set up of all these beliefs that are just absolutely outlandish. And there's so many, and it's probably overwhelming or it is overwhelming for everybody. And, when I was in school when all this COVID shit was going down, and it is a religion. It is absolutely a religion. And, people would be having conversations, and you could tell there's just certain stuff you can't say. You cannot talk about this. You can't question it whatsoever.
Yeah, it's
And
remarkable.
everybody,
It's like if you were in a church and you're an atheist, it's like you're not going to be welcome there and you're not going to change any minds. And I consider what we're doing to be analogous to an atheistic movement insofar as we're countering the mainstream religion, which is MSM, and their God constructs. And most people wouldn't even consider being skeptical about the Alec Baldwin story. You look at it and you're amused by it, and they're shocked and mortified. And I'm like, the whole point of it is they're merging real and fake. They get an actor to do something on a movie set, no less, and they manage to further, I think, blur the lines between real and fake, and they keep it that way. We're in a haze.
yeah, and it's getting real ugly too. Like, I live in LA, and I'm looking at all these billboards for the movies and stuff, and it is dark. Like, these are like our overlords, and they just are ruthless with it. Yeah, it's
Well, you know, at Ground Zero on 9/11, there were billboards for collateral damage with the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And there's even handheld camera of an explosion on one of the towers, and it has that billboard in the shot. That movie was altered after 9/11 because it had terrorists hijacking planes, crashing into buildings. I mean, that is like in your face concurrent programming. They write the zeitgeist. They write the world stage scripts and they perform it in front of us, and they're making history literally.
I can see it. I can absolutely see it. And the way they're rolling it out too, it's so you know, they'll ramp some stuff up and then they'll cool down and then yeah, the way they have it where it's just week by week, they're just moving along through time and slowly, getting towards their master plan, which looks like it's going to be a lot of, climate change shit and that whole agenda. And I was wondering what you thought, because I hear you say that about a lot of, they're not doing much to control the weather, but I think that's what it's going to take to an extent. If they're, I think they are already beyond, just the cloud seeding.
Well, okay, my contention on this here is simply that in the old world model, they needed us to believe in things like sin and an angry storm god who gets mad at your wickedness. And so the people who aren't wicked can then be polarized against the wicked. And they say, if you don't stop, God's going to get us. So they have these myths that are very compelling. And I think they're based on some primal fears and instinctual fears of the weather. But this weather god is a powerful construct. And in this new world religion, everything is based on science, but it has the same terror of the gods in order to terrorize the superstitious population and to get them to blame the other side. So today's bad weather is blamed on the capitalists who are using Gaia's fossil fuel up, just sucking her dry. And so there's this parallel story here that man is going to destroy the world, that the world, the angry God, is going to get us if we don't change. So I think it's part of the God construct that I aim to undermine. But the left believes in Gaia, the right believes in geoengineering. Both accept the premise that man's about to, in some almost supernatural way, control the weather. And I think that's a psyop.
I absolutely agree about the God construct. I've been watching or I've been listening to on Audible Secret Religion of the Elite a good amount recently, but a couple years back I watched that 3-part series on YouTube. I've been looking for it, can't find it, where you go into the Thelema and all of that.
Yeah, Cult of the Obelisk. Cult of the Obelisk.
Cult of the Obelisk. There it is. I might be able to find it now. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, but I feel you on what you're saying. I do. My question is, or I want to get your take on how, like, if they're going to, impose vegan mandates and things like that and get people out of the, meatverse for real, because a lot of people do not want to give that up, especially the right wing, the people who have guns and pigs and shit. It is really going to take, and it's got to be, at least some years down the line before they can, more and more psyops and shit. But I feel like there has to be some amount of change in climate for anything to happen or anybody to go to Mars or something like that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And so the idea would be, if they had a secret technology to manipulate the weather, if they unleashed it, the public would say, look what you guys did, America, capitalists, Republicans, big oil. And it would be a perfect scapegoat operation. But the question for me is, does it require this, or can they do it all by media fakery? And I had checked out a movie called Geostorm from a Redbox, And it opens up with a scene of these fiery tornadoes. And it's because the space station was now controlling the weather and it had a virus, a computer virus. And so you have these fiery tornadoes. And the same weekend on the news, it was trending that there were fire-nados all over California. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Fire-nados introduced in a movie, and then on TV they're saying this is because of climate chaos. We're going to have new forms of extreme weather. So I'm thinking now, all they have to do is present it through the screen as inclement, uncharacteristically bad weather, and people will believe it. And since the weather's so bad, they're like, don't go out there, it's climate change. They'll stay inside and watch it on TV. It's a decoy operation, kind of like the empty tents.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah,
one other
for
quick
sure.
example. Last summer, there was a documentary on, or was last year around this time, it was a documentary about, it was like the Night of Hate. And they said neo-Nazis were going to run around attacking Jewish people. And there was this documentary about it on CNN. And I'm like, the people watching this who are scared aren't going to go outside. And they're going to imagine that there's Nazis marching everywhere. But they're too scared to go outside and check. So they're going to go with that belief. It's a superstition. And I think that's how they decoy people. They use decoys all the time. These imaginary things they put out there. And if they have you locked on the screen, you're not going to check. There was a PSA last year that came out from New York that said, if there's a nuke, go to the center of your house and watch the news. That was their message.
Yeah, most people, they can do it right in front of their eyes, with these fake shootings and stuff. And everybody will just run or whatever, just follow the crowd. Me, I'd be running in there with my camera. I'd just run straight to the center of the action. If it was really,
Exactly. Look, if that's what I've been saying, like I can't wait for Seattle to get nuked. If there's a big psyop here, I'm gonna go right up to the front. I want to see the production because I don't believe the news is recording something that's tricking them. It's not a hoax. Like they use the term hoax, and that's not the right term. The hoax is like, oh, they fooled us. No, no, no. This is like reality TV, and the media is the production company, and they wouldn't want you there because you would be an authentic witness.
yeah. Leads me back though. I wonder why they allowed us to, have somewhat of a fighting chance to, even have a think tank. Because, we got all the stuff in school comes from these people. And yeah, their system's real deep. It's very interesting.
No, that's a good question, and I think we're allowed to have Trutherville, managed by Judas Goats, managed by Wolves in Sheep's Clothing, the Alex Joneses of the world, for example, Russell Brands. Like we're allowed to have them. You have your approved, establishment-friendly counter narratives, but
can't stand that.
But those guys are the ones we're allowed to have. But what we are doing here is out of bounds. This was not allowed, and if you look at it, this think tank itself has been targeted for censorship, for exclusion, for marginalization in a very personal way by somebody very politically connected, somebody who's actually worked in the White House, a hacker who's involved with the Hunter Biden laptop thing. My point being, we were targeted to be removed a long time ago. So I don't think we were meant to exist. The fact that we're still here is just a reflection of the people in it because what we're doing is very singular. And I'm not going to stop. We're going to accelerate over the next few months with the idea here is we get everyone on the same sheet. Auto hoaxing, skepticism. There's no going back once you've understood this premise. Once you've taken the look.
No way.
And what will happen when we have 10,000 of us? Well, accountability. We don't have the numbers right now. People like High Impact Flicks or any of these big shills, you can say something to them. You can call them out as reinforcing the mainstream, and they just ignore you. I get blocked, I get ignored, get shadow banned, but soon we're going to be too big to ignore. And that's my next goal, because I'm interested to see, how big can this get?
Yeah, that would be huge, because, 10,000 people with the auto hoax mindset, that is it's just a different, when you're not when you don't automatically believe what you see, it's all the difference. And real quick, I've been thinking about your case with these with Marcus, and when I heard you saying how you were talking on the phone with somebody, I would recommend you always talk to these people in writing, so you can have a record of what they're saying. So when you go into court, you always want to build evidence on these people. That's exactly how they operate. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. They're game players. They called me. They were really super nice, and then they immediately file their motion to dismiss, and but they did me a favor. They showed me their hand. But no, they're snakes, and I recognize they're all snakes. And the last thing they want to do is admit that they were wrong, that I was wrong, that the IPS was wrong, and they don't want to be responsible for damages, because if they pay a big settlement, it's going to make us look like underdogs, which we are. But they don't want us to have that spotlight because it makes them look bad and it would empower us too much. So it's going to be interesting however it ends up. But no, I am completely aware that they are mind control central, and they know very much what our objective here is. I'm certain of it.
Yeah. I did, on another note, a caller called in, and I hear this pretty often whenever I'm listening in. Somebody will mention the Constitution or some amendment or something like that. And I've been studying law for the past year and a half, and like pretty deep on a, so-called conspiracy level. And I've come to the conclusion that they usurped the Constitution, so you don't really have, or I guess the real person that I'm talking to has the protected rights that are in the Constitution, but that name that's attached to that Social Security number that deals with all your property and everything, you've essentially contracted yourself into a territorial jurisdiction, and it gets real deep. And I'd love to do a presentation or something, because all these courts, none of these are common law courts. Anytime it's a criminal matter.
Okay, I've heard much of this stuff, and it's easy for people to say that they're wrong or it's an archaic interpretation, but the fact of it is, the people who criticize what you're talking about aren't usually aware of the world stage and how fake all these things are and why that matters. Like I say to people, what does it matter if they're going to try to take your guns? They've already taken your minds. So there might be something to it. It's sort of like Westworld, where you sign up and you go into this simulation. It seems like we have somehow acquiesced in some way to a total simulated reality. And that's why there's no legal repercussions against the governments of the world for running mass psychological operations and brainwashing nonstop. The fact of it is, there's no distinction between government, media, entertainment, and academia. It's all world view building. So we're in some type of a construct, a Truman Show. And yeah, maybe somewhere along the lines we are somehow ignorant of our predicament because we have not been told the rules of the game.
Yeah, the contracts are tough. These people are big merchants, and a lot of it's about the money. They invented the money. The money is, every time somebody gets a loan, it creates money. So the money is created through evidence of indebtedness, and and then you go and you pay back the loan with interest, and so that's why the national debt is $30 trillion.
33. 33. Maybe
33.
Yeah.
Damn.
Now, this is interesting too, because earlier today I was talking about how the One World Trade Tower represents the Tower of Babel and how it looks like a pyramid. I was bringing up all these different things, but on the back of the pyramid, on the back of the dollar bill, you have the pyramid and the Great Seal, which has the single eye or the mono eye. and it's on the back of your money. So I'm thinking mono eye and money has an interesting connection. And the man with the most money in the world, and he just surpassed Musk again, is Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos has the most money in the world, and he's building the Helix building in Virginia, which they have compared to the Tower of Babel. And I've compared him on the world stage to Nimrod, the builder of the Tower of Babel. It all ties into his space agency and all this stuff. But my point is, the man with the most money in the world, Jeff Bezos, used to have a very pronounced left eye, like a monocle, like is being emphasized. And I thought, most money in the world, and he's got a mono eye. And then you have the single eye atop the Tower of Babel on the back of the bill. So there's some connection here, I'm saying, between the money system and this ultimate control system revolving around the Tower of Babel that we're all inadvertently feeding and worshiping.
For sure. Yeah, a lot. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, you've done, or from what I can tell, it goes back to the Hellenistic period, and that's when a lot of the, Thoth worship and whatever was going down. And I can't tell because Christianity came from, they just made it up. I don't know where the Old Testament, how that originated, but Christianity, at least, Jesus wasn't a real person. You get a lot of Christians in here and stuff, but that's just how it is for me.
That's fine. Speak your mind. If someone has strong faith, they can take it. If they can't take it, their faith isn't strong, and Jesus is mad at them. So say what you want. He can take it if he's real. But my point, too, is that, we're looking at worldviews, and religious worldviews are the old version of mass media. And I think it's all about establishing a priesthood of knowers, and then the masses who don't know, who are given false interpretations. And that's how it works with mass media, knowers and believers. And I think believers are people who get their information filtered for them. And being a believer is to be subservient to the knowers. I think that's the basic power structure. That's why I look at religion as just old school mass media.
That makes a lot of sense.
And when I say mass media, I'm not talking about just news, but I'm talking like mediation itself, like the processing of your mind and conforming it to a specific world view. And all these old religions are being supplanted by the mainstream one. And this might explain why we have so many movies where you have a character who seems to be like, in a subtextual way, Christ. Like there's so many movies I can point to. We have like these Christian allegories just thrown in there. And it's not because they have a message of promoting Christianity. It's because they're replacing our old mythology with new mythologies all the time.
Yeah. And nobody's even getting it either. That's the thing that gets me. Yeah. It's like, nobody gives a shit about what these people are doing. And I think that's a lot. Like, you look into these like old philosophers and even a lot of the people today, and they just think, we're stupid, we're not worthy, blah, blah, blah. Their little philosophy.
Yeah, I find the term philosophy, when I say like what we're doing here is philosophical, people think of philosophy as detached from reality or questioning reality. And like when I talk about philosophy, I'm more talking about our epistemology, how we think, how we operate, and how we organize the information of our perceptions. And if we organize our perceptions and then secondarily, or primarily rather, we look at the screen as that's where everything is happening. Like, so if I sense something or perceive or hear something that's not on the official version, I'm just going to ignore it. So they teach you to self-gaslight. They teach you to accept the screen as a filter. And even if it's not lying to you all the time, they control you by the context, by the fact that they frame your field of reference. That's why everybody, like NPCs, are all saying, hey, what happened today with AT&T is just like the movie Leave the World Behind. Why are the masses referencing movies for what they're living through? Not a coincidence. It's because the movies are part of the propaganda that gets you to believe the news.
Yeah. And the state of our fellow people, it's tough because they don't even, they don't want more for themselves. Like, I think I came out of this because I just had basic questions like, why are people going to jail for doing whatever the fuck they want and it's not harming somebody or things like that, But people, a lot of people are scared.
Consensus. Consensus is powerful. You don't want to go against the mob, and it's like fashion, the way it spreads. I think people are trained in school also to fear going against the mob. You say something out of line, everybody laughs, and everybody's looking at you, your peer group. And I think they use that as a way of keeping people in line.
Yeah. No, yeah, because I was at school. We had the masks on. It was like absolutely brutal. I remember, and I was watching you a lot back then, and I was in astronomy class, and it's just this 68-year-old teacher, total goofball, and she's always shitting on flat Earth. She's a big mask wearer, vax getter, and the teachers, like, they were allowed to be biased, and it was foul. The whole thing was just gross. And everybody had a mask on, and it was unbelievable.
Well, you may have seen through it because you had questions, and then what generally happens is the free thinkers get dragged into what I call Trutherville, which are the state-approved counter thoughts or the state-approved counterculture. And the fact that you saw through that will save you a ton of time and energy, because that's what it does. It wastes your time. And I'm like, this is the fast track. I don't believe in breadcrumbs or spoon feeding or planting seeds. I'm like, no, let's go full paradigm shock, push them over the edge of the world stage. And if they can't swim with us here in the raft, they're welcome to go back. But I'm not trying to wake the sleepers. I want to get the people who've bypassed it, because I think there's at least 10,000 of us. I really do.
No doubt. 10,000 people with the potential for sure, because when I was watching, I went from like young Pharaoh, to Bro Sanchez and all types from Pizzagate to young Pharaoh, just all types of shit. And fortunately, I landed here in a relatively quick amount of time, which, I don't even know where I'd be if you weren't doing this. I hope I would have at least gotten to some truth, because that whole thing is just filled with half truths and people who don't really want to do research. They just want to, have somebody tell them everything. And
yes, alt believers, alt belief instead of seekers.
Yeah.
And what the thing is, like, this isn't platformed. Like, you would not have found, like, this is not a state approved platform. And that's why I say we need the numbers, because I don't believe that we should put quantity over quality at whatever. I want strict quarantine. But I just know from past experience, from the number of views I've had on videos in the past, despite all the deletions and the censorship, I know that there's far more than 10,000. I'm kind of lowballing it. But my plan is to do a promotional book tour with Autohoaxology 101 and aggregate 10,000 by hand. That's how this has to be, above ground. And once we get that number, it'll metastasize. It'll spin out of control. It won't be under my control. This is asymmetrical in the sense that it's a leaderless resistance, you could say.
Yeah. Well, there is a solid amount of individuals that really know what's going on, that are, because I've seen channels go and go and go, and each one just climbs back up to 1,000 subscribers, or 700-800 subscribers, and that is nothing to scoff at in any way. That is not easy. and even just holding a lot of live viewers, I do think this will catch on as well. I have that belief.
And look, this is the thing too. We're talking about this is not new. It's not conspiracy theory. They can't denounce this as anything more than repackaged skepticism, drawing from the original skeptics from the ancient Greek skeptics like Pyrrho, who basically defined it as suspending judgment, and if you don't have the facts, don't react. No need to get emotionally entangled. And they claimed that this was a path to inner peace. And it seems to me that what defines the world stage and the participants is a constant state of inner war, political warfare, fear of war, turmoil, man at war with the world at war with man. It's just nothing but war. And it's the perpetual mind war. And it's based on believing stuff you have no evidence for. It's like being in a doomsday cult. That is what it is. So by opting out of it, like the old skeptics, I think we literally are achieving a state of inner peace. Like I am not perturbed by anything that I see on the news. Whereas I know that in Normieville, there's just ripples of fear going out every day.
Yeah. Forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, I like how. Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Well, I appreciate you calling, and you're one of the first persons I've talked to who was actually in a classroom at the time when the fashion statement went out there, and you witness it. Lose your face, lose your individuality, and it's just a bunch of judgy eyes everywhere, and it's very hard to resist.
Yeah, really. Yeah, yeah. Just everybody's eyes and yeah, creepy. And oh yeah, this is what I was gonna say. They really are an extension of the elite. They got these people working for them in so many ways. They're getting them stupid rich, and then they're getting them stupid rich, and then these beliefs that they have that they're getting these people to enforce. It's comical.
You know what? You're right about this too. It's like with the religion. They spread through numbers by conversion and believers. It's a numbers game more than anything. And if they have the numbers, they can. It's that word I was using earlier as hyperstition. They just manifest it into reality, and everybody goes along with it. And it is very comical. It's clown world, and it's incoherent and it's contradictory.
Yeah.
But if you're in it and you're on a side, it's very, very real. And that's why I think it's like a simulation in so many ways.
No doubt. No doubt.
But
all right.
Okay,
All
hey,
right.
appreciate the call very much. Thanks again for calling. We all appreciate it and for your participation. And I think this is going to be a year to look forward to. So thanks again, and call back anytime.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Phones are still open for the time being if anybody has anything to add to that. We accept the reality of the world with which we are presented, from Christoph in The Truman Show. Like, this is something to really keep in mind. For years and years and years, conspiracy theorists have been ridiculed. They've had the intellectual low ground. This is why I attack chemtrails, because it's a flawed premise, and it's used against free thinkers to make them look like they're not thinking things through clearly, and they need guidance. What we're doing is separate from that, and what's more is we are right. Like, we are correct. It's not correct about what we believe. We're correct in asserting what we can know versus what we can't know. We are correct in our agnosticism, and we're correct in suspending judgment on things. Moreover, we are correct in including in our assessment of media the propensity for the media to use psychological operations and other forms of propaganda manipulation and movie magic. We include that in our assessment. If you're not including that in your assessment, you cannot arrive at the truth. You cannot do a debate between flat Earth and globe Earth in an intellectually honest way if you're not talking about the role of propaganda and movie magic. If you don't see the political utility of the space program itself, as far as fomenting a singular worldview for all mankind, if you can't see that, you aren't, I guess you're just not capable because of the box that you're in. And that's really what it comes down to. The box is like the Truman Show. And if you don't go beyond the boundaries of the world you've been given, the worldview you've been given, you're not going to arrive at the truth. You just can't see it. Alt media is looking inward at mainstream and looking across at woke media, but they're all looking into the world. None of them are looking at the outside or from the outside looking in as we do. Anolfo says, what you say about chemtrail believers applies to flat earthers. No, it applies to flat earth believers, not globe skeptics and not shape agnostics. A flat earth believer is the same thing as a globe believer, is the same thing as a chemtrail believer. What I'm suggesting here is with the chemtrail thing, you can say, I don't know what it is. Well, that's an argument from ignorance because it's well known. If you say, I don't know what the world is, that's because of a lack of information when you don't trust the sources you've been given because you can demonstrate where it's flawed. Movie magic, green screens, harnesses. But you cannot say that contrails don't exist with the same certainty you can say moon landings don't exist. There's actually a big difference. But concluding that it's a flat earth is merely an assertion without the facts to substantiate it. It's kind of a belief, and there's not enough information. So, no, I would say, yeah, flat earth believers are different from globe skeptics or shape agnostics. And it's an important distinction. If you lead with a model, you might be presenting a closed system. By closed system, you might be ruling out more. And that's what I was initially criticizing the flat earth thing for. It's like you guys have a model with an ice wall and a dome. So you concluded without even checking that there's no more land. Well, what do you think they're hiding? If there's any basis at all for concealing the world or hiding it or lying about it, it's probably hiding resources, if anything. Salty Siren says, this whole realm is about compartmentalization with the goal of externalization of the God self. I agree. Elephant Tusk says, the simulation functions on probability. Do something unexpected and unpredictable and you'll glitch it. You know, I've been having a lot of conversations lately about synchronicity and intention and how this realm, this place behaves in a like a cybernetic feedback loop. And I often compare synchronicity to that. But doing something unexpected, making a choice, making a decision is a key component here. I was referring to the forked garden the other day from the book Labyrinths, which was referenced in that Griselda movie. And it's describing the labyrinth as a metaphor for life. Not a literal maze, but every choice you make takes you down a different path, a different reality, you could say, a different, like it veers off, but that when you make a random choice or you make a decision, you're activating your will. And your will and your intention is what triggers through this feedback loop, the synchronistic occurrence. So today I was, well, this was yesterday, I was sitting in my truck and I was writing. And I was writing about mirrors, the symbolism of the mirrors and masks. I was just thinking about these things and about how, you know, what we project into the world should be it should be considered, you know, just what you project intention wise maybe should be a factor in the results you get. Like maybe it makes sense in some way to take some responsibility for events if you're an intentional being, not an NPC. If you're making choices because you're more or less interacting on a certain level with the level of responsibility for what occurs. If you accept the premise that synchronicity is something that originates with the individual and their intention. But I'm thinking about this, and I was just looking at the idea of a vision, your vision of reality, and how it's just a reflection. It's kind of a mirror, not the real thing. But I'm thinking about, you know, what do you want to put into this? Like, do you want to create a world where your vision necessitates collateral damage and conflict? You know, so this is just kind of where my head was at. And I look up and I see goodwill. And I'm writing about will and intention. And I'm thinking about good intentions in a sense. So I just kind of randomly walk into the goodwill. And the first thing I see is a mirror, and it has this wooden frame around it, and it says, "Live, love, laugh." And in the middle of the mirror is this like phoenix-like bird. So again, I'm writing about mirrors, thinking about vision, thinking about projection, projecting intention, and I walk into a Goodwill, and I see a mirror, and it says life, love, laughter. And as I'm looking at this mirror, there's a song on the radio playing, and the chorus is life, love, laughter. So I look it up, and it's a song by Donovan Frankenreiter. But the coincidence of seeing a mirror with live, love, laugh, while a song, life, love, laughter, is playing, is merely a coincidence. Mirror aligns with the song. But then you throw in my thoughts that caused me to go in there, the intention, the good will, and the symbol of the mirror itself. And so what you have here, in my view, is feedback. I would say that these synchronicities are examples of feedback and a suggestion. The whole idea of live, love, and laugh, as in projecting into the world, which was exactly what I was thinking about before I stepped in there. But just another one of these coincidences, of course, and I had to look up the song. But I don't think it's merely a coincidence when you throw in the third factor, which is intentionality. So it would have been a coincidence if it was just the mirror in the song, but the fact that I was in my truck writing first, and based on my thinking and the sign that said goodwill, and then the random decision to go in there, I threw in randomness. Salty says, this is literally how my whole life goes. Sometimes it takes my breath away. Yeah, and what characterizes synchronicities beyond coincidence is the jarring nature of it, because it's like in your face, you've been heard, or this is an effect of your intention. And it suggests to me that matter is likely a substrate of mind, and that our intention and the choices we make and the realms of possibility that we access would be infinite if it weren't for the habit of following along with a linear trajectory like Truman, like an NPC going along with the program. And breaking the program is randomness. Breaking the program is taking a chance or doing something out of the ordinary as an act of will. And interestingly, the definition of magic, according to Aleister Crowley, is essentially any act of will intended to cause change. And this could be anything, whether it's working with your hands and building something or probability manipulation. But the idea is taking conscious control over the reality as it manifests, without the presumption that it's all set in stone and it's all going to end in a certain way. Like, I think it's indeterminate, and that it's not created until it's experienced, that all we have is the now. I don't have any reason other than the synchronistic occurrences, because if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have any reason to suspect this. Everything would be very easy, cause and effect, very linear. But it's when I have these other types of instances where right place, right time, what are the chances? It's not really about probability anymore. All right, let's see what we have here. Elephant Tusk says, always communicating with the higher self and spirit realm. Yeah, I like the concept of higher self, or levels of consciousness or modalities of consciousness that aren't confined to the five senses, that aren't only concerned with terrestrial survival. Perspectives that might not be bound by time and space, which would give it this insight, which would perhaps explain some of these right time, right place type of situations. But it's also notable, too, that these experiences are pathologized. There are names for them, and it's in the DSM. And you go into a padded cell because you notice this stuff. Noticing patterns is probably a mental illness. Objectivity is probably a mental illness today. But one thing that I'm really grateful for is the fact that I've been paying attention to these things for quite some time, but it wasn't until this think tank that I had a pool of other people to converse about this with who didn't automatically reject it, gaslight it or minimize it, which was always the trend. I'm like, why are people always minimizing these very profound experiences? Minimizing it, negating it, saying, you know, you think too much for a domesticated ape with a swollen ego on a rock falling through space in a meaningless universe. Watch more football. It's like, no, I don't think I think too much. I think there's a reason why I'm not satisfied with the answers I've been given. And before I ever even questioned NASA, I was already thinking about the implications of synchronicity in my life, because it was getting to be just too much, too wild, too strongly indicative of some type of meaning. Like, oh, life is inherently meaningful. That there is some kind of intrinsic struggle between light and dark. And it may not be cartoony good versus evil, but there is some type of, whether it's sentience, mind over matter, and matter trying to somehow mind gets, or spirit in matter. There's some type of situation here that we're living through that's beyond meaningless. I mean, I think it's intrinsically about meaning, which is why I say I lean towards panpsychism. And with that, I mean, I'm in agreement with some of the pioneer Russian rocket scientists who conceptualized outer space and space travel and mankind as a multiplanetary species. You know, from the beginning of the space program, it's always been influenced by New Ageism and theosophy. All right, let's see what we get here. Mango Penguin says, you'll never get bored, Tim. Yeah, I never get bored because I'm just incredibly curious about this stuff. And the caller had mentioned history. And look, just because we don't know doesn't mean it's not known. We know that it is known. The people who are burying history, the people who are misrepresenting the world, would be the ones who know the truth. And if there's any objective here at some point, the think tank rolls out, blasts some guardrails in Trutherville, offload tens of thousands of former cult members in Alex Jonestown. They stop taking the Kool-Aid, and we amass this big group. Then we go for the world stage. But then what then? And to me, this is where it gets kind of interesting. I mean, I have some ideas as to where it could go. I have a lot of plans as well, but I have to be somewhat circumspect. I have to be careful about saying too much, because this is like a chess game in a way. They do play games. And I don't think it's a coincidence that any attempts to define what we're describing about legacy media, putting people in alternate reality, it's laughable that people believe the news. Elon Musk, top mind junk super spreader, top disinformationist, he's out there hijacking these concepts. All right, let's see what else we have here. My notes, going to my Twitter feed. If you want to follow me there, it's IPS Insider. I've been following Japanese Twitter. Here's a great clip of, this is great. This is from Earth Day. This is ironic. So here you have the astronauts in the space station on Earth Day, and they have a globe. And one of them drops the globe, and it falls to the floor. So what is that? Is that microgravity? Do we have any glurfs, any gloobers? Can you explain why the globe falls to the ground?
So can you see hurricanes from space? Yes, you can. In fact, as we've been talking up here, you can see the whole hurricane, and that's pretty neat to be able to see it. You can see the eye and how it's forming. But one of the things that's interesting about up here, when you see that whole hurricane...
Now, look, if it was true, and you could see a hurricane from 200 miles up, they would be doing videos from their iPhones. They'd be doing selfies with a hurricane behind their head, but they don't. The hurricane footage you get always just looks like the same old 8-bit graphics, CGI garbage. You never see it from their perspective. But the guy talking is about to drop the ball.
You're pretty amazing.
Oops, he just dropped it. And now when he drops it, all the other astronauts, N-O-T, the other astronauts immediately reach for it, but their bungee cords won't let them grab it. They run against their own cords, and nobody can get it, so they just try to pretend and play it off.
You're pretty amazed, and you start taking pictures and all of that of it.
Uh-oh, he dropped the ball. Anyway, any gloobers in here can explain this for us? Psy Obstacle says, show me a live stream of the buildings upside down with the people walking round. Now, this to me, if you're a common sense thinking person, these people are lying to you. You're giving them $78 million a day to pretend they're in space. And this is the best I can do. This is pathetic. But that money's got to be going somewhere. And I'm thinking it's going to the underground Mars bases, which they're going to fill up with a million brainwashies. IFEP 73 says, all these props, but no one carries a phone. Yeah, if I was Apple, I'd be like, hey, look, you guys take iPhones, record some footage, let an iPhone live stream, let it orbit around the Earth once. We will pay, for your mission. But no, nothing like that. They got gorilla suits. They got a trumpet. On 9/11, there was one American astronaut on the space station. And on 9/11, he was listening to Tom Clancy's Sum of All Fears. Sum of All Fears predicts a 9/11-like event. And he says, wow, what's happening down there is just like the audiobook we're listening to, guys. And then he takes out a trumpet, because he had a trumpet on the ISS, and he plays taps on the space station, and they record it. You have a recording of it. It was Frank Culbertson Jr. He was the only American not on the planet on 9/11. And he remembers it, he talks about it, and he, in fact, had a trumpet. Good thing he remembered to bring a trumpet with him in case there was a tragic event that he could see from space. And this is back when they showed you the ISS with a handheld camera, and it looked like they're recording a map on the ground. It's pretty fake. But let me go and play a clip here from
city. That's when it really became painful, because it was like seeing a wound in the side of
This is like helicopter footage. This is not the ISS going 17,000 miles per hour at 300 miles above the surface of the Earth. And you can see the smog, the smoke from 9/11. Come on.
your country, of your family, your friends. I was visiting Williamsburg, and there was a veteran touring the grounds.
This guy's stories are so good. We'll have to do a separate conversation about him and his tall tales. Like, he saw an explosion from space in Afghanistan, and he later he met the guy who lost a leg. He watched 9/11 from space, and he played taps. But what's the point of it? This is your high priesthood, and like from up here, war seems kind of silly. Borders seem silly. It's all about getting you to embrace the one worldism, etc. Psyobstacle says, why are there no corporate sponsors on the moon? Yeah, there should be a McDonald's Golden Arches on the moon by now. All right, let's see what else we have here. Going through my notes. Okay, I think we've covered pretty much everything. That main thing today has been Bohemian Grove or Bohemian Grift, which I don't believe in it. I think it's overhyped. And we have another one of these wrestler figures or a fighter figure. And it's all real. You know, sports are all real. And he's basically giving us this nightmare scenario of what happened at Bohemian Grove, but it's probably going to be another big nightmare. Nothing burger. Then we have National Guard deployed to the New York subways. We got Hannah Reid, who handed Alec Baldwin the gun, being charged with manslaughter. Nick Fuentes says Donald Trump is effing hot and Hitler-esque and very hot, unlike that boring old white guy, Senator McCain. Okay, I think we've pretty much covered everything important. We're going to follow him up tomorrow with Ryan Garcia and how that ends up. But again, I think Bohemian Grove is just a major nothing burger. There's not going to be any revelation, not going to be any disclosure. All right, let's see what else we have here. AIDS, yep, chemtrails give you AIDS. And the mainstream media gives you mind AIDS. If you don't know what mind AIDS is, it's the state of the auto-believer with no mental immune system, and they believe whatever shows up on the screen. And if you have no mental immune system, then misinformation, disinformation represents an existential threat. You could be converted to flat earth by watching a video on YouTube, if you don't have any kind of skepticism. So the cure for maids is actually just skepticism, but not skepticism of what the other guys believe on the other side of the political aisle, but skepticism of the mainstream media framing of reality itself. A frame which is shared and reinforced by the entertainment and, of course, the political soap opera. Here's a pretty good meme posted by Tia Gloria. Here's a guy on the left on a train, and he's on one side that is facing the wall of the mountain, constantly triggered by the news. And you have another guy here on the other side looking out the window, knows the news is a show, and enjoys life. This is actually a really good cartoon. It really does explain how things work. And the people who are triggered by the news are mad at the people that aren't triggered. Like, you not reacting makes life more dangerous for me for when it gets real. Or you aren't taking it seriously enough, which makes it dangerous for everybody else in this village. Like, oh, why aren't you afraid like the rest of us? And fear-based collectives, these various cults, it's always about either the promise of paradise or the threat of something dreadful. But what happens if you lose the fear? What happens if you lose the constant deluge of fear porn? Are you rudderless? This is why I find this whole thing very interesting as well. What happens if people really do unplug and go off the grid? Nobody in alt media is off the grid. You can be in a bunker in the middle of the woods somewhere. Nobody knows where you are. You have a ham radio, MREs, AR-15, ammunition, and Bibles. You're totally off the grid, but guess what? You're on the grid. You're on the grid if you still believe in all these things that cause you to think you had to go run and hide in the bunker in the first place. The only way to be truly off the grid is, of course, to embrace skepticism at this level and direct it accordingly, appropriately. And there really isn't a name for this. They call us, as a pejorative, the truthers would be like, you auto-hoaxers, you automatically call it a hoax. It's like, well, you're auto-believers. You automatically believe it. Which is worse, the skeptics or the faithful? The faithful believers in lies, in a lie-augmented reality. One more point. Auto-hoaxers don't only have the intellectual high ground here, because we have a more realistic and inclusive assessment. We have the moral high ground as conscientious objectors to a psy-war. If you're in the psy-war, you're pro-war. And you lose the moral high ground because by reinforcing the psyops, you're reinforcing the terrorism that goes after everybody of all ages. There's no defense. Nobody gets an opt-out. And you're part of that if you haven't stepped off the stage and you're still active in any way in promulgating any of it. All right, let's see here. And Nilfo says, there's another meme that says, give us better psyops. Yeah, I'm glad that people are entertained by the psyops. When I see stuff like that, I see it as progress. Commenter also says, I am a glober, but this one is a stage and a plane. Well, I think it's safe to say I don't know. I think it's safe to also reach a point where if they've lied about this and that and this, then they've lied about everything else. Like, the next rocket launch isn't going to be real because we know the previous ones weren't. And the special effects may be improving, but they haven't ever answered for the first few. It's a house of cards. Trey Forrester says, I'm prepped up because I know their scripted events lead to consequences in the real world. I like food, water, and stuff like that. Right, well, people were prepped up for Y2K. They were prepped up for 2012. They were prepped up for Nibiru in 2013. They were prepped up on toilet paper before the pandemic. And what's to be prepped up for next? And if you weren't prepped up in 2020, you weren't paying attention. Everybody had it then, but we should all be prepped up. And then everybody's going to run for the hills. And everybody's going to be in the hills, and the cities will be empty. It's like a bunch of preppers out in the hills, a bunch of empty homes. But no, I don't have a problem with prepping, but I think it's rational. You know, there's a reasonable basis for doing so. I'm not really against that, but I think prepperism, motivated by partisan paranoia, is kind of flawed, and it's based on what? The grid's going to go down. And there's something else. You know, again, this has been going on just too long. But if you think about the time and the energy, you know, worrying about these future calamities that never come, it's like that's a lot of time and energy that could be directed to something else. So what stepping off the world stage does, and what it will do, let's say for the 10,000, is it will unleash all this cognitive surplus. The time, the energy, the loosh that was being plugged into maintenance of the world stage construct can be redirected. And there's no way now to know the long-term consequences. Like, here's something I'm very interested in. Not to get into the metaphysical, but you know, if we are spiritual beings having a physical experience and our physical bodies are manipulated through our minds via an all-encompassing mass media, you know, what implications does it have in terms of our spiritual aspects as far as like, let's say, for example, intentionality and synchronicity are connected, but we're directing it towards their box. So collectively, it's not being used, is what I'm saying. Or it's being directed to reinforcing the dominant paradigm. What happens if that unplugs? You know, do you have things out of the box occur? This is all very interesting to me as far as where it can go. But we'll have to see. You know, will they stamp it out? Like that movie Equilibrium with Christian Bale. They realized that we have to get rid of culture and memes because it leads to this. And that's where we're at with Disease X. They're allowing X to showcase all the stuff that scares the public about information. So they say, oh, it's an infodemic. That's what Disease X is. We need to cure this. They're showcasing this stuff for the purposes of getting people to acquiesce to censorship in the future. I'm not saying don't be a prepper, but I gave up on it on March 31st, 2020, when Richie from Boston said, power's going out, internet's going out, buy my MREs with the 15% discount code, order now. I'm like, wait, you want me to order your MRE prepper foods the day before the internet goes out? I don't know if it's going to make it to me. And it almost seems like the entire right-wing conspiracy theory echo chamber is designed to make people insecure and then sell them cures. Like, oh, don't drink your water. It'll shrink your gonads. But here's a water purifier. Oh, thank you, Alex Jones. Or here's some iodine because North Korea is doing some missile tests. And if he does, and there's some fallout, you're going to want some iodine. Here's some iodine, ivermectin. They have like a cure for everything they tell you to be afraid of. And to me, that just sounds like a grift. I guess what I should recommend, though, is make a prepper friend. But don't waste your time prepping. All right, this has been great. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can find... There's a song that was referenced by Psy Obstacles. Oh, yeah, that's right. Where's the Curve by Chief Crow. I put a link below, by the way, in the chat. If you want to get onto the newsletter, you'll get archives sent to you nightly, and you'll remain apprised of everything that's going on. The big news today, Autohoaxology 101 is going to Amazon, Kindle, and paperback, and Audible. So that's going to be happening. The paperback books are arriving here by the 11th, which means the promotion for Autohoaxology 101 is about to begin. Salty Siren says we should Discord during the eclipse. Okay, good. We will. And we're going to be more involved in Discord in the coming weeks. I mean, really, we started it last week. It's going to be more routine, but it's going to be a big part of what we do. Pretty much the rest of the year, actually. So if you want to get in on the Discord, there's a link at infiniteplanesociety.com. Thanks for the comments. Thanks to the callers, and we'll see you all tomorrow. This is Chief Crow. I'll put a link below.
is the place that love makes life.